Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone here this afternoon. If you would please take your seats, we'd like to begin. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone here this afternoon. And would you please then stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, first we'll establish a quorum. We do have 3 here today, and that is our quorum. We have 2 of our directors that are on vacation, and they'll be joining us next time. Do we have a report from closed session?
No reportable action, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move into Item 2, special reports, and do we have our sheriff here? Someone representing the Sheriff's Department? There he is, Commander Taylor. Welcome.
Good afternoon. For the period between May 26th and today, Sheriff's Office has received 398 calls for service in Cambria. Included in that number were 41 traffic stops, 12 pedestrian contacts, 15 foot patrols of the local creeks. We're beginning to check on some of the illegal encampments and try to get them moved out before fire season is in full swing. We had 20 alarm calls for both audible and motion sensor alarms. 10 were businesses, 10 were residential. There were no losses associated with them. We had 8 incomplete 911 calls that required deputies respond to check. There was no notable incidents that emerged from any of those calls. We had 1 vandalism report, and that was the front door of an office building in the 800 block of Main Street. The front door was found kicked in by an unknown suspect on June 21st. The door itself opened into a foyer area. Suspect then picked up a chair inside that area and hit a second door leading to one of the offices. However, there was no entry made into any of the office suites. We had 11 disturbing the peace calls. They ranged from loud music and parties to loud guests at a local hotel. There were 8 arrests, 2 for narcotics, 1 for possession of a stolen vehicle, 3 arrests for outstanding warrants, 1 arrest for drunken public, and 1 arrest for evading a peace officer in a motor vehicle. The arrest of the possession of a stolen vehicle, that was on June 12th. When at 2:48 in the morning, deputies stopped to check on a suspicious man who was sitting at the bottom of a staircase in front of a closed business in the 2000 block of Main Street. The man, who was identified as Eric Bank of Cayucas, said that his motorcycle had broken down. While the deputies talked with Blank, dispatch advised them that the motorcycle was stolen. The deputies arrested Blank and put him in the rear seat of their patrol car. While they were inspecting the altered VIN on the motorcycle and preparing paperwork for the tow company, Blank slipped his cuffs from behind his back, reached through the half-opened window, opened a car door, and fled. Deputies searched for him using canine teams and a helicopter to no avail. In the late evening of the same day, Blank was seen by Cal Poly Police riding across their property near Poly Canyon on a motorcycle. When they attempted to stop him, he fled, but was stopped by them shortly afterwards, and he was arrested. That motorcycle was also found to have been stolen. We had 1 petty theft report. That was a victim who reported tools stolen from the bed of their truck on the 27th of May in the 2200 block of Romney. There were 2 burglaries reported. One was on the 29th. We had a local hotel manager report that their supply closet had been entered and large quantities of little soaps, little shampoos, and little shower caps had been stolen. And on the 7th of June, we had a wife who came home. Actually, this was an arrest for spousal abuse. We had a wife who came home. She was drunk, and she attacked her husband by biting him repeatedly, seriously enough to draw blood. When the deputies arrived, they ended up arresting her. we've had 3 incidents of defrauding of an innkeeper. All of the incidents occurred within the last month. They were at Robin's Restaurant, the Black Cat Bistro, and the Cambria Pub and Steakhouse. In all 3 instances, one suspect was responsible. He's identified as Jared Crockram, a local transient. The case has been forwarded to the DA's office, and we're waiting for an arrest warrant for him. The good news is that our budget is finalized for this year, and 2 additional patrol deputy positions were put back into the budget by the board. I just want to personally thank Supervisor Gibson, who is our supervisor for this area, who really kind of led the charge to put the positions back in. They'd been requested, and then they'd been removed by county staff. And I think that between these meetings and public support for additional patrol, we were able to get the board to move on putting those bodies back. What the positions mean for us here in Cambria is that once those deputy positions are filled and I've got those bodies at my station, I'm able to put a second graveyard car out at night, which means that the people in this room and all the people on the North Coast will not be sharing a sole patrol car between the hours of 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. with Los Osos and Cayucas and Avila Beach and unincorporated San Luis. So there will be a car on the North Coast. So it's a huge gain for us and for everybody in this community, and I'm very happy about it.
I'm going to tell you right now, that is huge.
The last thing I wanted to mention was I looked at our schedule at the station, and assuming everybody that works for me stays healthy and nobody's wife has a baby or anybody has to take time off, I'm able to bring back the bike patrols. So I have 2 deputies that are assigned to bike patrol. They're working in all of the different communities. So they're going to be in Avila, but they're also going to be up in the Cambria area in the villages. So if you see deputies dressed in a peculiar bumblebee-looking uniform on a bike, wave to them, stop and say hi. They're your patrol force. They're just patrolling in a different way, and we're happy to bring that back. And hopefully with the graveyard car, it'll give us even more flexibility as we move into the fall. That's the report.
Thank you, really, very, very much for that. It is very important to us, and so for everyone's work, and there were several people working on that. We really appreciate it. Also, I wanted to say when you have your numbers in your incident reports, mm-hmm. if it's possible, because I think it helps us to kind of get a better kind of picture of which areas maybe were on the increase, mm-hmm. the decrease. If it's possible, sometime can you give maybe at least quarterly comparative data in the last, so it would be June compared to 2015. Mm-hmm. I think it gives us even a clearer picture of what's happening in our community.
We can do that.
And we don't. And then we have a comment also from Vice President Thompson, and then we had a public comment come in after we started the item, so we'll catch that after Vice President Thompson.
Thank you, Commander Taylor. I think you probably know that next Thursday, the 30th, is a Tip-O-Cop dinner in Cambria, mm-hmm. and I assume that you'll be here in all your splendor.
If I won't be, there will certainly be deputies that will be.
Right, and I as I understand that there's 2 seatings, one at 5, one to 7. The 5 o'clock seating is sold out, and there's are still a few seats available for the 7 o'clock, but I imagine those go pretty quickly too. And so we're pleased to have the sheriff and all his personnel here again this year. It was a big success the last couple of years, and we're looking forward to another great evening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no other comments. Then thank you. And we do have a public comment on item 2A from Tina Dickinson.
Good afternoon, Tina Dickinson, Cambria. I asked, I think it was 2 meetings ago.
And just for a moment, we'll start in just a minute. Who's starting the clock on the public comment? Okay. Excuse me. Okay, now we're ready.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. I think it was 2 meetings ago. I have been and I'm sure many Cambrians, including you, the board and staff, are very, very concerned about the elevation of crime in our town. And I think I read in this month's agenda packet that you, President Robinette, had spoken with Commander Taylor or the Sheriff's Department and arranged for some more coverage. Is that correct?
Yes.
I gather you are allowed to speak, actually, when or anybody's at public comment, but I want to know how much more coverage will we be receiving, because every month the crime is going up and up and up. So whether this little or supposedly little community service, I'm in the middle of speaking.
Yes.
What's happening here? I'm speaking, Director Thompson.
We're wanting a response from the commander, and so we'll bring him back on those questions.
Okay. Golly, rules are rules. So I'm wanting to know what then has been, because it's in the agenda, and I thought maybe you would speak on that, on this item. What is being done to protect the community? It really is getting out of hand. It's getting out of control. And I'm seeing people still emerging from Park Hill on Heath Lane, coming out of the bushes, the undergrowth there, the overgrowth. I'm seeing homeless people emerging, even though I thought that was being taken care of. Here we are coming upon fire season, and we still have people living in the woods and in those areas with heavy brush and foliage. So we better get at it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite Commander Taylor to come again in case it wasn't clear. Bob, call. Okay, here he's coming back. Thank you. Commander Taylor, I know you did in your report talk, in fact, about what just happened here for us in Cambria, and of course that's when I gave the applause, because I think it's huge what has happened between several people working on this. Certainly our supervisor, my letter, the response from Sheriff Parkinson, the people that represented the board, Director Sanders at the Board of Supervisors meeting. Would you elaborate slightly on what this does mean, this increase? I know you were out when she asked the question, but it was, what are we going to do? And she may have missed that part, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, for 30 years that I worked for the Sheriff's Office, we have suffered with a shortage on patrol. There's a lot of reasons for it, but essentially what it means is that in the county from 2 a.m. till 7 a.m. there are 3 graveyard cars, 3 two-man graveyard cars, one for each area of the county. The Coastal Patrol Division runs from Avila Beach to the Monterey County line. The deputy that you have protecting you at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning is the same pair of deputies that are protecting everybody in Avila Beach, unincorporated San Luis Obispo, Los Osos, Cayucas, rural Morro Bay, and everything in between going up to the county line. The addition of these bodies that the board put back into the budget, it doesn't sound like an awful lot. It's just a couple of people, but what it's allowing my station to do is to put a second graveyard car out for our area, which means essentially that your response time in the middle of the night is going to be significantly reduced if you need a deputy, because they're not going to be coming from potentially the other end of our patrol area. They're going to be on the north coast. So it shortens the response times. I think it makes the community safer. And like I said, it's for me, it's huge. 30 years of going without, kind of a bare cupboard on graveyards, and suddenly we doubled our patrol force overnight. So it's a huge gain for us.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next on special reports, we have then item B, and that is our report from our CCSD Fire Department, and that will be provided by Chief Hollingsworth. Oh, in the uniform. Looks sharp.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. I'll just cover the whole day, and then we're good, right?
Better cover your bases.
You have my report before you. I'm not going to go into every detail. We had a total of 74 emergency responses for the month of May because we always capture the entire full month prior to the board meeting. That still is running in par, if not a little bit ahead, what we have historically been doing. So we are, like the Sheriff's Department, getting steadily busier as we move on. Two of the things that I would like to point out is that we are in the full swing of the annual fire hazard fuel reduction program. So you're going to see a lot of contractors and property owners out clearing their parcels in compliance with the resolution you adopted last month. And we're almost 2,000 parcels are on that list. So you're going to hopefully be seeing a lot of the repercussions of that in a positive fashion and providing a much safer fire community. And if you look closely, you're going to notice that our training hours for that month were significantly increased. And I just wanted to touch as to why that was the case, because it does translate to additional cost for personnel. We just completed our most recent reserve academy and brought 6 additional reserve firefighters on staff. And so they go through an exhaustive full-week academy where they're coming in with a minimum level of training, which is equivalent to what almost everybody else would be doing in this business. And yet we need to make sure that they're up to speed on our equipment location, how it functions, the little nuances of how it works differently. And that takes a lot of personnel hours, not only for the people that are in the academy, but bringing in existing staff to facilitate that. So please understand that's why that increase is there, but it's a very good benefit, not only for them, but an excellent review for our current staff. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask, too, on, it was brought up, from the sheriff, and then certainly in cooperation with CSD Fire Department, CAL FIRE, and then also I've noticed state parks, too. On some of the transient people that do spend time here in the forest and other places, do you, when you're out working on some of the fire reduction, do you encounter and encourage them to know they can't be there? It's a great fire risk.
Absolutely. And those that we do come across and interact with, those are reported to the Sheriff's Department. They're aware of where they are. Any eviction notices would have to come through the Sheriff's Department for that. For the people that are there and maintain that, we make sure that they don't have any active cooking supplies. They don't use live fire. There's a handful of people in the community we've known for a long time that periodically move throughout some of the areas that are not occupied. And we make sure that when we interact with them that none of that stuff is occurring. And quite frankly, some of those people are the ones that are so adamant about being frustrated about others that don't follow that policy. Mm-hmm. But the Sheriff's Department is absolutely notified when we come across those.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Moving on then into item 3. And in fact, Chief Hollingsworth, I think, could stay toward the front here in just a moment. We have a presentation now for Chief Hollingsworth to receive the official oath of office, the Chief Badge, and collar pins. And here comes General Manager Gruber. And I'm going to join him at the podium.
My wife and some of my family are here today. Her name is Jandy, and Grant, Kyla, Jandy's folks, Ron and Connie, are here as well, along with a bunch of my friends and colleagues. So.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
that
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to
to the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and
California,
the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge
fully and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much. Want to say something? Sure.
Have to get my cheat sheet out. First of all, forgive me for not being in my Class A like Chief Hollingsworth here. I just came from the Sherpa fire. I'm still assigned to it, but I got special permission to be able to come here and share today with Chief Hollingsworth. So just a couple of things I wanted to say. Can't believe it's been a whole year since the day that I was asked to come and manage Cambria CCSD Fire Department. I was put in a quite the interesting position to come here and manage the department. I had about 24 hours notice, pretty much unprepared, but it was pretty incredible, the men and women of the Cambria Services District Fire Department, how they helped me throughout the process. They were very professional throughout the process, and I would like to also thank their families for supporting them. There was a lot of uncertainty for them, and certainly an emotional time for them and their families, and just kudos to the folks that work for the department and how they made it through together. There are a lot of things that CAL FIRE and Cambria CCSD fire departments have accomplished within this last year that not everybody knows about. Just a few things. We identified the strengths and the weaknesses of the department. We came up with long and short-term goals to make those weaknesses better. And we also had the Safer Firefighter program implemented with the help of Captain Torlano. And we've gotten a fire engine, hopefully, in the budget for next year. There's many, many things that we've accomplished, and that's all to kudos to the folks that work here. There's very, very dedicated to the community in the district and the fire department. I've said this several times since I've led the fire department, but it's very true. They're dedicated to the community they serve. The other thing is I would like to thank all the members of the board and President Ron Bonnet and General Manager Jerry Gruber for being so supportive, and General Jerry Gruber for spending pretty much, we met once every week. He gave me about 30 minutes of his time every week to stay informed on how his fire department's doing and what he could do to support them. And I really appreciate that, and I'm confident that that's going to continue with Chief Hollingsworth. And it was an honor to serve your community. I thank you, and congratulations to Chief Hollingsworth. Can't wait to work with you. And anything I can do to help you in the future, you know where I'm at. You've got my cell phone. So thanks.
I chose not to have my wife try to stick these on my shoulder because there's enough of them, it might take quite a while. And she might be a little bit too eager to see how hard she could do that. But I just wanted to say thank you. I know that's a very simple phrase, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. I have the opportunity to work for a very storied and historic type profession, and this agency in and of itself is the second oldest fire department in the county. We have a long history, and I feel very honored just by the amount of people and support that's here today. It's a little bit overwhelming. It's not to be expected and not taken lightly by any means. I had the opportunity to work for with some very fantastic people. Chief Putney is here today. Captain Bitto is here today. Both people that I had the opportunity. Captain Bitto was one of the first people I ever worked a shift with or ran calls with, and what I learned from people like him is immeasurable. And I have the opportunity to continue that today with all the other personnel that are here as well. And if I took the time to name every single one of them, it would take quite a while, and yet they all know how important they are to me and the success of this organization. So I would like to blanketly say thank you to all the people that I work with. The people in the county, there's representatives from a number of fire departments here, from the EMSA. I've had the opportunity to work with them and will continue to do so, and we have a fantastic working relationship, and I look forward to fostering that in the years to come. All that being said, and I know that this may be sometimes glossed over, I honestly have to thank my wife and family more than anybody else, because maybe more so in this occupation, they have to rely on you being gone in inordinate amount of time. The amount of training and education and callbacks and things that eat up your time as you do this job are pretty crazy, and it doesn't stop at each level you go. It just becomes more intense, more required training, more levels of education, more certifications, and some people might look at a promotion like this as the ultimate, the top of the hill. You got there. And I feel more along the lines of that this is just the beginning. Not only in regards to our working relationship, but for the years to come and my own personal training and where I'm going to be going with my education. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity, and I will do everything I can not to let you down. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and thank you everyone that is here, and certainly everyone that is here today representing firefighters in this and throughout this county. I think we're a very fortunate community. I think we certainly know that we are in good hands. The partnership that we watched strengthen and evolve with CAL FIRE's partnership over the last year, and moving forward with our fire chief and the other fire departments that are represented here today, just lets this community know that we feel very, very comforted by your presence. So thank you very much for all of you attending today. Okay, now we are going to go ahead and move to our second presentation today. And representing Balance Public Relations, we have Diane Gonzalez with us to provide an update of activities. So we welcome you here today.
Thank you very much. And I know
we'll give them just a moment to go. It's fine. Thank you.
And I know we have a PowerPoint presentation to show you. Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
She's so good.
We'll wait. We'll let the firefighters have a moment.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Actually, I should let her go first. Should I? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So we welcome you here today. Very nice to see you, Diane. And you have a PowerPoint, I think, to share with us?
I do, and thank you very much. And Dean apologizes that he wasn't able to be here today. He had a meeting that he wasn't able to schedule, and it was much to my advantage. I will tell you that I absolutely love your gorgeous city, so it's wonderful to be back again. And this morning we are presenting the scope of work thank you, for balanced public relations. And as you can see, it is strategic advisory work on general permitting for both water and wastewater, identifying grant opportunities for recycled water projects, specifically improvements to the wastewater treatment, I lost that last word, plan to meet the RWQCB requirements relating to the TMDL. Don't you just love acronyms? I know you know them all very well. Education and strategic communications around the emergency water supply project, the EWS and other brackish water treatment facility work, providing the Cambria Community Services District board members with pertinent legislative information and relevant regulatory reports, and government outreach, communication, and external affairs. And so that's part of some of the scope of work, and we can be more specific and tell you that we are currently in our strategic advisory work on general permitting for both water and wastewater. We have EIR input and positioning with the new DWR regulations and the 2016-17 Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Plan, which includes the broadening of certain extended 30-year financing eligibilities. We understand that this will affect Cambria wastewater funding, so we're closely monitoring this. And with the Coastal Commission guidance, we are actually putting together a meeting for Jerry related to having an ongoing working group to find and resolve issues as we work through the EIR. And our goal is to seek Coastal Commission staff guidance and work with them cooperatively. And in conservation, there's a new standard with a localized stress test approach. And it's Governor Brown's new approach, giving local communities more control, and Cambria should continue to make its own decisions moving forward. And we understand that, that we will need to continue to monitor this as well. And we are putting together a meeting for Jerry in Sacramento to discuss with DWR. In the grant funding workflow, it's identifying the new grant funding opportunities and the water recycling funding program. The wastewater system in Cambria, Cambria's building must and should apply to supplement current local funding. So this is important for Cambria moving forward. And in small communities, wastewater regulations and assignment, we are monitoring all of the regulations. With Prop 1 financing and assignments, we still recommend staying in the mix for these dollars as regulations are now completed, and we are talking to the staff at the highest state levels. And with the assignment of the PM wastewater, we are scheduling a meeting for our general manager to meet with our assigned project manager, and during his meetings the second week of August. And Jerry and Dean have already met with them, but he would like to reconnect, and it's important that we do that. In relation to the Coastal Commission discussion and education and strategic communications, we are continuing to work with staff at the Coastal Commission. And Jerry is doing really great work connecting with them and creating a good, solid relationship is our goal. And in relation to Department of Water Resources staff, Jerry, you might want to chime in here related to these pending issues.
Where did you leave off? I'm sorry.
On Department of Water Resources staff?
Yeah, when we go up to Sacramento, we're continuously meeting with them and positioning ourselves as it aligns with the goals of the board, one of which is to improve our wastewater treatment facility and funding available regarding upgrades to that system. And Bob could help me out a little bit on that and where we are with that process.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Yeah, we have a couple of things in the works right now. Just kind of going back to our Prop 84 grant that we got through the county's Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. We did do another iteration of our project completion report that should allow release of the final 5% retention on that grant. That's about, I think, $218,000 or so that we are hopeful to get in, which is the remaining 5% that they hold back until they get that final documentation from us. We have a revolving fund in with DWR for the fiscalini, or an application in with DWR on the fiscalini tank replacement. We've been corresponding back and forth with that project manager a few times now and providing them the updated information they request. That's a very low interest loan that we can get through that program. And then I know there's been ongoing discussions with the state on other issues of concern. You know, we are having those ongoing conversations over the EIR, of course, that we're working on. Did I cover everything, Jared? Did you like? Sorry. Oh, we're working on also the water rights permits and that process with the state DWR. Okay.
Thank you. As you
You're
can see, very active involvement with DWR. And with the California State Parks, we have pending issues that we're also resolving, and Jerry will be meeting with them again in August. And with state and assembly staff discussion, it's very important that we continue to update policymakers on the issues surrounding Cambria. It's, the education process is lengthy as key staff reposition and members change with the California term limits. And we are continuing to provide a legislative analysis of pending bills on the Senate and the Assembly floor. And we're monitoring legislation as we've handed out in the past, and we specifically look for issues that impact conservation and the community. In providing the Cambria Community Resources Board of Directors with pertinent legislative information, we track water public workshops, and they're held monthly, and Dean does attend these meetings. And with attending DWR groundwater guideline meetings, this is a very fluid process, so we have to continue to stay engaged. The Cambria Policy and Education Day in Sacramento, scheduled for the second week of August. And as you do not have meetings in July, neither does the state legislature. And this is why we've scheduled them for August. And with our government outreach, communications, and external affairs, as I mentioned, we provide legislative analysis of the pending bills, and we are scheduling our GM Sacramento visit for August. And as we've previously done, we've scheduled meetings with the Parks Department. I think you outlined the issues, the myriad of issues with DWR, and with the project manager for wastewater, and of course, Coastal Commission staff. And we're continuing to monitor the Coastal Commission and discussions related to EIR issues. We're participating on conference calls and getting feedback from key stakeholders. And so this is our comprehensive and strategic government affairs plan of education for the community, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, we do have, let's see, we don't have a request. We do have a request on public comment, but we may have some questions from the board or comments and discussion first. Anything at this time? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And so we'll hope to see Dean Flores next time with us.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We have then on this item, public comment, Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson. I would like to know in what capacity Ms. Gonzalez serves with Balanced Public Relations. What is her status with BPR? That wasn't mentioned. When I get up, I say, Tina Dickinson, Cambria resident. I think at the least that we could expect is what is her capacity with BPR, since she's standing in for Mr. Flores. How many more meetings is Mr. Flores going to miss when we're paying him almost probably $10,000 a month? He was hired in April of 2015. That's when you took your board vote. Today's agenda has an item to where you're going to extend for another year Mr. Flores' contract. These PowerPoints tell us nothing. There is no written report. There's nobody's name listed there as to which department up in Sacramento Mr. Flores has met with or Mr. Gruber has met with. For $10,000 a month, I would expect to see a full report so that we, the Cambrians who are paying Mr. Flores $10,000 a month, would like to know exactly what is being accomplished. The reports are vague and they are not substantive. I've said this over and over, as have others. As far as Mr. Flores' what has he done? Well, I saw in a public records request that I received that he was attempting, and in fact did arrange, ex parte meetings with Wendy Mitchell and with Chair Kinsey for Director Robinette, Director Sanders, and General Manager Gruber. And it seemed from the string of emails that I got that apparently that didn't occur. But when you talk about talking with Coastal Commission staff, it's not the coastal commissioners you should be talking to, I would think, right now, but staff. They're the ones that are going to be working on the draft DIR. It is just so frustrating as a ratepayer, as a member of this community, that so much is being done behind closed doors. I want to see true transparency, because what I'm finding out in public records request responses is quite revealing. Quite revealing. And I will reveal more and more as time goes by. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment, response? Okay. Moving on then to agenda review. Any additions, deletions, or pulled items from the consent agenda? I do have one at this time. Item G on 7G, we would ask for a continuance on that and bring that back at the August meeting. And let's see, the second one, no, that's what I have is continuance in for item G. General Manager Gruber.
Was there any changes you wanted to make to the minutes as they reflect?
We had talked about that, and
everything look okay to you?
Yes. When we had the June 2nd, the closed session meeting, the public comment before, there were 4 public comments shared during that meeting, and they are listed. That's all I have. Any items to be pulled from the consent agenda? Not hearing anything? All right. Okay, then let's move on to item 5, public comment limited to 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for anything that's under our jurisdiction but not on the agenda today. First request for public comment then is Paul Carlson. Welcome.
Good afternoon, President, directors, and staff. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I would like to speak in favor of what you're doing. Basically, there's a lot of comments about dissatisfaction with what you're doing. The fact is the opponents of an adequate water supply for Cambria are once again busy spreading false information to Cambrians about the sustainable water supply project. First, a statement used recently in emails to Cambrians is that the hills around Cambria are going to be infested with dwelling units such as in Southern California. The fact is that Cambrians passed Measure P06 And I wonder if anybody knows about this. In November of 2006, this measure states that a majority vote of the citizens of Cambria is required to distribute water to anyone outside the CCSD district, and the cost of that vote and any CEQA required must be borne by the requester. Note that this measure P06 passed 78% to 21%, so there's not much likelihood of this happening. Furthermore, the EWS emergency operating permit requires that the CCSD apply for a regular operating permit. This regular permit is a requirement and not due to a CCSD desire to sell water to developers. It is the benefit of Cambrians to have adequate water to irrigate their trees and shrubs, as well as to flush their toilets and for daily hygiene. To accomplish this, the year-round permit is required to do that. Okay, otherwise we can only do it when we have an emergency. Second, for the past 10 years, we've heard from, this is a good one, from the vocal minority about the mothballed desal plant in Santa Barbara. It has been one of their favorite horror stories. Now these opponents of an adequate water supply for Cambria are sending new emails suggesting or hoping that our multi-million-dollar water supply facility will also be mothballed like the one in Santa Barbara. For Cambrians reading these messages with alarm, let me assure you that the Santa Barbara desal plant is not mothballed, but been under rejuvenation for the past year to the tune of $55 million of capital improvements. It is scheduled to go online in October of this year and produce a third of Santa Barbara's water. Morro Bay is also looking at implementing their desal, and there's going to be a meeting in Santa Clara with the Coastal Commission over that. Finally, regarding the opposition over water rate increases, it indicates a lack of common sense to suggest that the CCSD can deliver half the water at the same price as before water use restrictions were implemented. The cost of goods sold is virtually zero when the SWS is not operating. While there are costs for pumping and chemicals, the majority of the costs are fixed costs. This reduction in revenue caused the increased cost per unit sold, and most Cambrians recognize this as not opposing the rate increase. Note that the average family in Morro Bay is now paying $100 per month, which is about what we're paying. I'm paying $200 a month for staying in the 8 units. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Thank you. Okay, next on this item on public comment is Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson. Last month became quite a brouhaha because it seems that some folks are not aware of Government Code 54950 and how it pertains to the Brown Act. I had asked legal counsel Tim Carmel about 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, could he please provide for the board, staff, and for the community a refresher on the Brown Act. So I'm going to read right now 2 portions from Government Code section 54950. The first is this: the people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may control over the instruments they have created. Under 54954.3, Section C, I read the following. The legislative body of a local agency shall not prohibit public criticism of the policies, procedures, programs, or services of the agency or of the acts or omissions of the legislative body. Nothing in this subdivision shall confer any privilege or protection for expression beyond that otherwise provided by law. I had every right to speak at public comment last month, and I hope this is some clarification for what I did. Now, regarding closed session, legal counsel said this morning, there's no report from closed session. I went to the continuation of that meeting where we were enclosed in what was like a pig pen in the little area of the reception area of the CCSD office. 6 people attended that meeting. There was no agenda. I had to ask for agenda, which I was rudely met with the receptionist. When I asked for it, she then had to find out about it, and she finally got an agenda printed out. So there were 6 of us in this little tiny area, and the 5 board members were lined up behind the gate with legal counsel on this side and administrative assistant or administrator on the left. And the flag was brought out, and we all pledged our allegiance to the flag. But I can tell you, that was probably one of the most insulting situations that I have ever been in. And then to be, when I read something that was absolutely true, that a director questioned me or told me that I was wrong. He was wrong. And I will point that out again in the general manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on item 5, Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm a little short on sleep, and that's because of the House of Representatives. And I watched C-SPAN, and felt exactly exuberant, because all of a sudden my 8th grade civics class was true. Now, of course, this morning we heard about the big oil spill down in Ventura, so we've got a different thing happening today. And we keep hearing about wonderful, talk about a word. When I look at the photos of the drone that the drones took of the winery over there on 46, off 46, I think of when I was in the 1970s and I worked on a task force for the National Council of Churches, and we went down to Appalachia and we walked the strip mines and talked to the people about strip mines. I really don't know quite what to think about this country anymore, and I want to read you a passage from a book called After Nature by Jedediah Purdy, who teaches law at Duke, I think Duke, yeah. Our present age is also committed to boundless economic growth. The survival of any Western government, and probably the very legitimacy of states such as China, depend on it. It is our politics, it is suicide to ask whether mandatory economic optimism points not to real prospects, but only to a convenient illusion. Environmental ideas sometimes loosen the hold of these premises in productive ways. Take the prejudice against judgment, the assertion that no one is entitled to assess another's life. We hear that a lot here. Because environmental lawmaking dedicates acreage and resources to visions of nature's value and our place in it, it unavoidably engages questions about what is valuable and how to live. Dear Madam President, last night we saw a sit-in. That reminded me of my life in the 60s. Every time I come here, I yearn for a substantive discussion among the members of the board, and perhaps you would engage the public, in how we envision the future of Cambria and the surrounding environs. I won't sit down. I don't have the courage, maybe, of John Lewis. But I urge you to consider the possibility that what's happening here in this book describes us, namely, by our economic vision of the future, we are destroying the essence of where crabs live, my favorites, of where birds live, my favorites, of where dolphins leap, my favorites. And we have to hold ourselves to account, Madam President, for destroying where we live, because it ain't just this book. There are dozens of books talking now about what happens when we humans destroy our species. Thank you.
Thank you. No further request for public comment under this item, so we are ready to move now to item 6, managers and board reports. And so give me just a second here. Okay, on item 6, we will now have, well, let's see, we do have a request for public comment, but I think I'll save that till after your report.
Thank you, Madam President. Could we go ahead and bring the PowerPoint, couple slides up if we have that? The reason I want to show these is it directly ties into the goals of the board, but also some of the slides that I'll be showing you are public health and safety related, specifically Fiscalini Ranch, and one of the projects that's being done there. Next slide, please. I hope these are the right slides. So this is the Fiscalini Ranch forest restoration. If you live adjacent to the ranch, this is a 1-acre test plot that was been done recently. You've probably heard some chainsaws going up there. It's right off the Tampson Drive area, and we plan on doing 3 of these this year. And this is the first one that's been started and been completed by a combination of CCSD staff, by county inmates, by some CAL FIRE folks, and then the California Conservation Corps. So the way I look at it is, how do you need an elephant, whether it's infrastructure or the ranch? The 400 plus acres, you do it 1 acre at a time. And so I'm pleased to see that we're starting this, and that we'll continue to make progress on the ranch as funds become available and grant options become available. Next slide, please. As you can see there, this is a continued shot of the forest restoration project. You can start to see some of the vegetation on the ground being removed, and some of the smaller trees being kept in place. And if you notice the distance between the trees, that's indicative of a healthy forest. Next slide, please. Those are some of the crews working. Again, remember, this is only an acre area. With anything over an acre requires additional environmental reports and clearance and things like that, and okay from the county. So this is an acre, and you can see the crews out there working. Next slide, please. There's some more pictures of the forest. Next slide. You can see, and Carlos took these, you can start to see into the forest. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, so now here we are at wastewater, because there's a lot of conversation about our wastewater treatment plant. One of the goals is that we continue to make improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. There's ongoing maintenance to the wastewater treatment plant, and of course, when we come to that point in the journey where we'll upgrade the wastewater treatment plant, and that means just essentially improving the overall wastewater treatment plant to produce a higher grade of water leaving the effluent, then that time will come, and that's one of the grants and things we're going after. But this is aeration blower has been returned and is online. One of the things that we've done is this blower ties into a bunch of air lines at the plant, and those air lines were leaking. All those leaking air lines have been all repaired at the wastewater treatment plant. Could we go to the next one? This is a 100 horsepower motor, so next one. This is a pony blower. So when this plant was designed, they put 3 blowers in and a backup blower. Why they did that, I don't know. I would have done things differently. I think it's a little bit of an overkill. But this is a 50 horse. This is we have a smaller 100 horsepower that is running now. That really should say 50 horsepower. The bigger ones are 100 horsepower. So we haven't been able to use this one before because it needed to be rebuilt. But more importantly, because of all the holes that were in the system, the manifolds, the digesters, it allowed so much air to leak out that it wouldn't provide a sufficient amount of air to the tanks, and you need air in a biological process. So we're able to use this one now and rotate it in, which will result in a significant reduction in electrical cost. Next slide. These are our effluent pumps. You see where that wood grate is right there? That's the base. That's where that's the motor sits on, and then you have a pump that goes in down to a wet well. That base was cracked on that. We've pulled out that motor. We've replaced that base and repaired it, and have rebuilt the pump. So this is what takes the final product from the wastewater plant and pumps it out to the spray fields. So when this one gets back online, we'll do the same with the other one, and there's some additional pictures behind that we're going to be cleaning up some electrical areas and things like that. Next slide. So we've had a lot of talk about the digesters, and what I wanted to do is, as best as I could show you, a lot of the air leakage that I was talking about was in pipes leading into these digesters, these two digesters. Well, for whatever reason, the districts decided to run two digesters on an ongoing and continuous basis. And what we're doing now is we're emptying those digesters, and we're processing the biosolids on an ongoing and continuous basis. We eventually plan on having one digester completely emptied, which is about 250,000 gallons. And then we'll start on the second digester, and then we'll probably bring that one all the way down to a minimal level. What this will do is it'll improve operations, and it'll reduce the smell that's been generated from the wastewater treatment plant. I have been brought to my attention lately that there has been an increase in smell coming from the wastewater treatment plant, and it's these digesters. And what a digester is essentially is that you have to waste a certain amount of your biosolids off every day in a wastewater treatment plant. So that's what we're doing. And so by taking one of the digesters offline, it's going to significantly reduce the odor. One of the things that Corolla Engineer, if you remember, in their 20% design, recommended that we replace these. And Bob and I aren't really sure that that's the best way to go. We think that we can get by with probably one digester that would result in significant savings to those preliminary estimates that they gave us. But also there's a possibility that you can just take it right off your plant into your rotating biological screen, your sludge press, if you will. But I always like to have a digester as a backup. So next slide, please. And there's down in the digester. And again, if anybody wants to tour the plant, let me know. It says we are currently working on removing the sludge from the plant and making arrangements to have the sludge removed as it is produced, instead of sitting there all year long. So it's a combination between John and Bob and I and the staff down there, just figuring out how we can run the plant more efficiently. Next slide. So we've talked about the handrails on the digesters that need to be replaced. We do have some money allocated in the budget that'll be presented later on. But we had a welder down there that we got back up and operational. It was a pretty good sized welder that needed some maintenance done. The staff repaired that, and what staff has done, and this thing is about 30 feet long. Staff built this, and it is a prototype for one of the handrails down there. And what we'll slowly start doing is taking those old rusty handrails out and replacing them one by one, again at a significant savings to the plant operations. Next slide. So these are what the handrails look like. You can see they're very oxidized. Oxidized is an understatement. They're pretty much gone. Have lived their life, and so what we'll do is we'll cut those out and we'll start replacing them with those handrails. Those are on the digesters right now, so that's going to save a significant lot of money. I wanted to start with that because in my general manager's report, I'm going to kind of skip around because there's a lot of different things. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, there was a comment made at the last meeting about the San Simeon Lagoon, and I believe in my general manager's report, I've attached the last results of the nitrates leaving the plant. So we have a secondary treatment plant, and it's in theory not supposed to be able to produce an effluent nitrate of what we're getting out of the back of the plant right now. But we're producing nitrates well below 1 milligram per liter, which is advanced AWT treatment plant facility standards. So there's no way that we're contributing to any of the algae blooms that you may or may not see in the San Simeon Creek or the lagoon. There was some mention about the definition of a TMDL, which is total maximum daily load. That refers to nitrates and other constituents. So historically, the plant has always had a pretty high nitrate level because it wasn't required to reduce nitrates. But we made some operational changes, and in August I'll bring some more photographs back, and we've installed some internal circulation pumps and things like that and reduced the oxygen. And so we're putting out milligrams per liter out of the wastewater treatment plant of about 0.23 or even almost below detectable levels right now. What's important about this is it allows us to continue to run the sustainable water facility. What you don't want to do is put out high nitrates out of the back of your plant and then in part withdraw that water out of the ground when those nitrates are high because it will impact the ability to run that facility. And so that's not a worry anymore. That's not a variable that we have to worry about. I've included several things, correspondence, in an effort to continue to be transparent as part of my general manager's report. I'm going to continue to do that. I think it's important. We have a tentative ruling from Judge Garrett regarding the Land Watch case. It is a tentative ruling, and we're hoping to hear something in the next month or so on a final, next couple of weeks or so on the final ruling. I also included the letter from County Planning to the California Coastal Commission relating to Cambria Community Services District Emergency Coastal Development Permit. And I wanted to thank Kathy for running an article on that. And if it just would encourage everybody to read the letter again, there was a great deal of misinformation put out there in certain media outlets and within the community that just weren't true. And I think that coming from the county planner to the executive director of the Coastal Commission, just clarifying a few things I think was extremely helpful. I've also included a letter from President Robinette to County Sheriff Ian Parkinson requesting additional sheriff coverage for the community of Cambria, and then also the letter of response understanding her concerns and the community's concerns regarding safety. And as Commander Taylor indicated today, that 2 additional positions were put into the budget regarding stepped-up law enforcement for this area. But again, it is a community problem. It's where, like any community, everybody's going to have to come together and try to figure out how to resolve this. It's a social issue. It's a church issue. It's a civic group issue. It's a lot of different issues, and so everybody's going to have to come together and try to figure out what we are going to do as collectively as a community. And then also I put a detailed timeline with Crosno Construction regarding the Fiscalini tank. We did have a pre-construction meeting. We will be sending out a letter to all the residents in that immediate area, letting them know when the project will start. But the detailed timeline included in my general manager's report shows when the project's supposed to kick off. And what we did also do, and I want to thank William, our fire chief, for this, he put a demolition and reconstruction of existing 320,000-gallon tank replacement. He put a fire protection plan together, site requirement plan, a very detailed plan, because one of the things that we did hear from Mr. Fiscalini, and we did meet with him, or Director Sanders did meet with him, with District Engineer Bob Greshams, is that he was concerned relating fire during that tank construction. And so we do have a detailed fire plan if anybody wants a part of this. The contractor understands it. The contractor must abide by it. If they do not abide by it, we will shut them down. And then there were some other concerns that Mr. Fiscalini had relating to replacement of the fence surrounding the tank. And at one point in time, we promised him we'd do that, so we're going to honor that promise and do it. So again, we're replacing a major component of our infrastructure, the Fiscalini tank, that's needed to be replaced for a long time. Once we get that under our belt, we'll move towards the Stewart Street tank and the rodeo grounds. The 3 goals I wanted to touch on. We continue to make I think good progress. We had a very productive meeting yesterday with RBF, Michael Baker International, I'm sorry, relating to the EIR, and we were assured by them that the draft would be available at an administrative form to staff in August, and then also available to the public for review in August. So we're going to hold their feet to the fire. They committed to that. The other major goal that the board established was in continued and improved infrastructure improvements as related to the wastewater treatment plant. As you'll see in one of the items later on for Corella Engineering, that's the designing of the platform for the influent screen that is needed, desperately needed down at the wastewater plant. And then the third goal would be improvements to the East Ranch, the park. And I asked Carlos to provide me an update with that. And where we are with it is the application has been turned into the county. There's some back and forth dialogue with the county, concerns about a few things. We've ironed those concerns back out. We've submitted it back to the county, and we plan on having a completed application with the go-ahead to go ahead and put the project out to bid probably within the next month or so. Some of the area was identified as a floodplain, and so what we chose to do from a recommendation from the Pros Commission is just to not, it's such a minimal amount of grading that we chose not to even touch that area. And so that'll reduce the overall cost of the grading and drainage of the project. So we continue to make progress in those areas. We've had a total of 7 public records requests. We try to answer those public records requests as quickly as we can. Some of those are very, very lengthy and require a lot of information, but that's just part of the public process, and we'll continue to do that. It does take a lot of staff time, but that's the public world, and we're obligated to get that information to the people that are requesting it in a timely manner. I just listed some of the critical meetings that I have. Continue to meet with the executive director of FFRP. We have a really good working relationship with FFRP. The BRP Citizens Committee continues to do great work. They are a very committed group of people. They met with a couple members of them. Their group met with our staff for a couple hours yesterday. We met with State Water Resources Control Board regarding our diversion permits and the EIR. And again, talked with Tom Luster on the phone about our EIR and our regular coastal development permit. And I'll continue to reach out to Tom on a regular basis and just to keep him informed on where we are with the process of the EIR. I met with the school superintendent. We're working on a collaborative effort with the chamber to try to keep these medians alive in the community. What I envision is working together and seeing if we can come up with a solution to get those things back to where they should be. They're dying off pretty fast considering the drought. I did attend a leadership summit. I won't bore you with all the classes that I attended, but I did attend some 16 different classes at different times over a 2-day period. When the district and the community sends me to these things, I go to them from the beginning of the day till late at night, so I try to learn as much as I can. I'm putting a packet together for the board. It's a zip drive of all the classes and all the handouts and everything that was available, and so they'll have all that information. The district had a booth at the chamber business showcase, and we continue to meet with managers on a weekly basis, as Eric had indicated. And now that we have 2 new supervisors, we're going to, which is John and William, we'll be conducting monthly managers meetings. It'll be the following Tuesday after the board meeting. So what we'll do is we'll get together all the managers. We'll brief them on what happened at this board meeting today and the actions that were taken, and then they can pass that on to staff, so there's a clear line of communication between everybody. I think I've covered everything. One final thing, President Robinette and Director Thompson and myself, we attended the Fire Safe Focus Group meeting yesterday. That's a great group. just like the BRP Citizens Committee, great group. They're doing a lot of good things to prepare this community for in the event there's a natural disaster, not just fire, but earthquake, those type of things. The Board of Supervisors did provide a resolution. I won't read it. It provided to the Fire Safe Focus Group. And the resolution is proclaiming the month of July 2016 as Cambria Fire Awareness Month. So I'll be working with the Fire Safe Focus Group, with Chief Hollingsworth and the Fire Department, CERT, and making sure that collectively we get as much information out about preparing you as individuals for in the event that there is an emergency. And then one last thing, local hazard mitigation plan. If you remember, there was a lot of dialogue about the local hazard mitigation plan. I did get a proposal, an outline of the proposal that was submitted to consultants on June 20th, and they have till mid-July to get their request for qualifications back. Once that firm is selected, then we'll start working on the local hazard mitigation plan. And it'll be a collaborative effort between the district, Fire Safe Focus Group, the community, CERT, and I imagine other groups within the community. That was a grant-funded program, and so we're moving forward with that. I guess what I want to say is there's a lot of effort going on, a lot of good things. I continue to say this, a lot of good things happening. I mean, we've gone over a lot of very, very positive things. One of the things also is that our overall financial situation, and I'll let Patrick discuss that in the budget, that it wasn't too long ago that there was a lot of doom and gloom and that we weren't going to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, and we did. And we have a good, healthy reserve, and one of the things we're going to be talking about today is a reserve policy. So are we where we need to be or where I want to be as far as reserves on our infrastructure? No, we're not, but I think we are laying out a plan to get where we need to be. And we continue to make infrastructure improvements. We're playing catch-up, to be honest with you, but we'll continue to make those improvements. There was one other thing I just wanted to touch on is we received a complaint from a resident regarding bad tasting water. I want to encourage anybody, if you have concerns about your water quality or the taste of your water or too much chlorine or not enough chlorine, please call the office. We'll respond and we'll do some water quality testing. It was determined that the chlorine residual in that particular person's house was right in the range where it needed to be. And I also encourage staff to do a follow-up visit to that person's house to make sure that they feel that the water that is being provided to them is safe. So it's a lot of information, but just one other item, and we have spent regarding the land watch. Time of this was about right at $246,899. The time I printed this report, that does not include the district staff's time. If I had to guess what staff time was over the last year plus with providing information and things like that, I would assume that would be probably around the $100,000 mark. So it's been a lot of money. The other thing is Tom Gray is no longer our PIO, our Public Information Officer. Tom did a great job for us, but the response that I gave to Kathy is, who's going to fill those shoes, and it'll be a collective effort between staff and the board in getting the messaging back out to the community. So I thank you for all this time, and if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be more than happy to.
We do have a request for public comment, and then I think we'll take board discussion after that. Okay, so we have two requests on, one is specifically 6A, one is 6. We'll start with 6 first. Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
So we'll hear the finance officer's report later, Madam President. There was reference
Yes.
to him. Oh, okay.
But what I meant is, under the budget item, the approval of 2016,
yes, we have it under.
Oh, so it's everything that we have about dollars we just put under that agenda item, okay. Okay, that's fine. I might hold up until 6 p.m. or whatever. That is, I want to ask a basic question. You probably guessed that that's why I trundle up here again. When I looked at those slides of the forest, I asked myself my basic question that I used when I was a professor, I used it when I taught GED, I use it as a volunteer, I use it as a tutor. What is the objective? What do you want to get out of this? And what are the standards by which you judge it? When I saw those slides of the forest, you know what I thought of? My visits to Appalachia and strip mining. It looked exactly like there wasn't probably even one gopher hole left. It was so damn clean. So my question is, what are the objectives that you have as CCSD Board of Directors for the forest in Cambria? And how are you going about obtaining those objectives? I don't want to know what you're doing. I want first to know what are the objectives. Second, I thought I heard about sludge, a big issue about sludge, about 3 years ago, and now we're back again to sludge removal. I'll go back and look at your records and find out, didn't we spend a lot of money trying to figure out what to do with sludge, and now we're back again? Do we have a standard of removal of sludge to which we are aspiring, or do we just have to get around to it when there are complaints about stink? Number 3, I want to know, what is your objective for this district in the production of water for the next fiscal year? Do you as a board accept what the assumption was from the rate committee, who unfortunately are not here today, that there would be a 70% level of consumption by the residences compared to 2013? Is that your standard? Or do you even have a standard that you would like us to aspire to? Would you like us to use, we only use 60% as residents, not 70. Would you like us to use 10% more? Whatever you think, friends, please tell us, because sitting around drinking coffee and speculating is the pits. It's boring usually because my brain isn't that exciting about speculating. And I'll bring it up later. Surcharges. What exactly are your objectives in having or not having them? And I'm sure you're going to tell us in great detail when it comes up in the agenda today. And I can't tell you how I look forward to all those details. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on 6A, Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson, Madam President, may I have a few seconds to respond without my 3 minutes for 6A regarding the water? Because I was the person who called CCSD about my water quality. May I just, I don't want to have to bring that up in my 3 minutes, but I would like to share what Justin and Ben found when they came out, and I did call DDW, but may I do that, please? And I can give you the exact levels that they came up with, and because I don't want to take that from my 3 minutes, but it did come up. I wish it had come up, you know, when I could have spoken on that before. Probably I could have a public comment, but anyway, I wanted to just ask, maybe 30 seconds.
Okay, I think that if you want to talk about the report and they came out to your house and they took certain readings and then they explained that it was in fact below the level of concern.
Right.
If under public comment on what we're talking about right now is part of the general manager's report.
I know that, but the general manager brought it up, and I am that resident that called. And I just wanted to briefly just explain that, but not take the 3 minutes, because I have so little time to deal with any of this, really. So
well, if you could work it into your comment from the general manager's report, because that's where he brought it in, and you're on that. We'll start the clock again, certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because you're responding to the general
All right.
manager's report.
First of all, then, let me get to the general manager's report. I found it sort of interesting that the general manager had 6 bullet points, the first of which was the Land Watch tentative ruling from Judge Garrett. I mean, until you get a final ruling, I don't really know why that is the number 1 item. The number 2 item, the county, a letter from county planning to the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission certainly is well informed. They are not misinformed, General Manager Gruber. I wish you pay attention when I'm commenting, or anybody else for that matter. They are informed. And to imply that they're misinformed is really quite remarkable when this is an agency you're going to have to deal with when the draft DIR comes up. And I think the more that you treat them the way they're being treated from this board, this agency, good luck. Okay, so now I want to bring up something that came up in the February 18th meeting regarding the Cambria Community Services District entered into a design construct contract with CDM Constructors on August 7, 2014 for construction of the sustainable water facility. They did not come up with an agreement and enter into a design construct for a sustainable water facility agreement. They, on that date, August 7th, came up with a contract, here it is, the contract for an emergency water supply project. How can you just on February the 18th of 2016 say you came up with this project when indeed you came up with this project? I think there's a real problem there, and I would ask legal counsel to maybe look at that, because nothing could be further from the truth, and all you've got to do is go back into your own documents. Now, regarding my water issue, we used to have the best tasting water ever. We've had our house since 1997. I bragged about the water. It was great. When the facility came online, it didn't taste very good. And then when it would go offline, it came back to being fine again. Except in the last few months, the level of chlorine in the master bathroom, when you turn on the faucet, the fumes, you can just smell it. Then when you go to drink it, it is not drinkable. So when they came out on Monday, Justin Smith and Ben came out and they did these 3 tests in both bathrooms and the kitchen. In the back bathroom, where I'm smelling mostly the chlorine, it was 0.53 milligrams. Then it, okay, 0.53. Then the second bathroom was 0.44, and the kitchen was 0.39. Why would I get different readings in the same house with the same water source? I don't understand that. So I had lunch at this little cheese shop the other day, and they asked if I would like some water. And I said, well, I'm almost afraid to drink CCSD's water, but let me try it. The water tasted fine. I'd like to know why my water is so much more heavily chlorinated. Justin said he is doing a balancing act. They're adding way more chlorine to SR4 and SR3. Whatever that means, I wish somebody would please explain it, but I cannot drink that water. And I did have some gastrointestinal issues whenever I have drunk a little bit of that water. We're not drinking it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that, General Manager, unless you had any response, concludes the General Manager's report and requested public comment. We'll move now then to... Yes.
Mr. Robinette.
Vice President Thompson.
I just wanted to comment. I was pleased to see that Planning Director Bergman responded to the communication from Mr. Ainsworth, which to me it was really based upon a lot of ex parte communication from folks in town that have communication with the staff up there, and the language obviously could have been ghostwritten by someone here. So I was pleased to see that Mr. Ainsworth set the record straight, and folks have a real clear understanding as to what the situation is in here in Cambria with respect to that ERR issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No further discussion, comments then on the General Manager's report. All right, we'll move then to Ad hoc committee reports, other related board member reports. Do we have some reports? Director Sanders.
I don't have a report, Madam President. I was going to report on the Board of Supervisors' decision to add another sheriff's deputy, but that's already been covered. So thank you.
And I thank you for representing us to that meeting, too.
You bet.
Vice President Thompson? Okay, and I think General Manager Gruber has pretty much spoken to all of our meetings, including the Fire Focus meetings, so that would have been my report, too. Fire Focus, of course, I think the community knows, is an excellent collaborative group that meets, including the CSD, representative from the Board of Supervisors is there, all the different fire agencies are there, and it's just a very good, I think, ongoing concern, as we said earlier today, about fire, managing the forest, replacing and replenishing the forest fires, and then, of course, now we're also concerned about earthquakes. So the concern really goes beyond just the fire hazards that we live in. So that would be the only thing I would have added to that report. Okay, then we are now moving on to item 7. We have no request for public comment on item 7 on the consent agenda. We have no pulled items.
President Robinette, I would move approval of item 7 with the continuance of 7G to a later date.
Second the motion.
Madam President, before you vote on that, there is
Yes.
an inconsistency in item 7H. That's the Corello screen. It's the influence screen engineering contract. The proposal is for $57,100, and there's a $54,000 allocation. That should be corrected to $57,100, and I want to make sure that's in the record.
Okay, we'll make note of that. So what was that amount exactly then?
7H should be changed to $57,100.
57,100. Okay, the motion and second then, are you, you're good with that then?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion then. The approval then for the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think that was unanimous. It's not hard to count 3. So we'll move then into hearings and appeals, item 8. And first, 8A, General Manager Gruber, would you like to introduce that?
Yes, ma'am. I'll go ahead, Madam President, Board. Let me get this, and then District Counsel Tim Carmel is going to...
I can jump right in, Jerry.
Yeah, why don't you jump right in there?
This is the public hearing to consider a CPI adjustment for our fire suppression benefit assessment. We do this annually. The adjustment this year is 1.1%. Recommend you open the public hearing, take testimony, and at the close of the public hearing, adopt the resolution that would make that adjustment.
Okay, very good. And that is our next then part of this is to have the open public hearing on item 8A. Receive public comment. We have no request for public comment. I'm going to close then the public hearing on this item. And discussion on the item? Motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of resolution number 20-2016.
All right, it's been moved.
I second it. I
And-
don't know, Mr. Carmel, does that motion have to be read, or does it?
No,
okay.
we're good.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded on the item for 8A as introduced, and so I think no further discussion on that. Approving the fire suppression benefit assessment consumer price index adjustment at the rate of 1.1% for the 2016-2017 fiscal year. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion approves, unanimous, 3-0. Okay, we'll move now to next on 8, under hearings, 8B, item 8B.
Thank you, Madam
If
President.
you'll introduce that? Yes.
Yes, District Council Carmel will introduce this one also. I'm enjoying this. This is
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is a public hearing to consider the confirmation of the itemized cost report for our fire hazard fuel reduction program. The amount this year is $12,112. Again, you open the public hearing, take testimony, make any adjustments you feel are appropriate, close the public hearing, and then adopt the resolution which confirms the itemized report.
All right. I'm going to step slightly backwards on this, not this. I am sorry. First of all, I apologize to Karen Pearson, who is here. On the last item on the consent agenda, we didn't have any request for public comment other than this is not the one? It is.
Oh, okay.
I think so. Yes. Yes. So anyway, Karen, I apologize for that. We had no request for public comment for someone to give a verbal comment, but I do want to note in the record that you have requested on that particular item that you would like a written comment submitted for the record. So that will go into the record under consent agenda item 7. Thank you. Okay, now we'll get back to 8B.
So, Madam President, it's time to open the public hearing, take testimony on the itemized cost report for the fire fuel hazard reduction program, and at the conclusion of that public hearing, take action on the resolution to confirm that report.
Okay, and we have no request for public comment on this, and so I will close the public hearing. And discussion?
I would move adoption of Resolution 21-2016, confirming the 2015 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Cost Report.
Second the motion.
Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes for 8B on 3-0. Okay, we're moving into 8C. And who would like to introduce item 8C?
I would.
Yes, okay. Okay. Mr. Carmel, would you please introduce item 8C?
This is.
I've never seen you so gregarious, but go
I am very
ahead.
excited about today's agenda. I'll be very active in it. This is also confirmation of an itemized cost report. This time it's for delinquent solid waste charges that are now collected on the tax roll. It's the same procedure. You open the public hearing, take testimony, make any modifications to the itemized cost report you feel are necessary or appropriate, close the public hearing, take action on the resolution to confirm that itemized cost report. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Public hearing is open. No request for public comment. I will close the public hearing. Any discussion from the board? Motion?
I move we adopt Resolution 18-2016, adopting the itemized report describing each parcel and the amount of delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges to be collected against each parcel.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item 8C passes 3-0. We're moving to item 8D. And item 8D, would you like to introduce that, Mr.
No,
Gruber?
I want this one.
Okay, so no, Mr. Carmel had his hand up first. I'm sorry.
I got to do. This is a public. Thank you, Madam President and board members. This is a public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 25-2016, approving CCSD budget for fiscal year 2016-2017. Just a few preliminary statements. I'd like to thank the Budget Committee, all of the department managers, especially William Hollingsworth, and then our new wastewater supervisor, John Alden, and for stepping in really late in the process and really working very well. This is the third edition of this budget. It represents a significant amount of continued and improved infrastructure improvements related to water and wastewater. I'd like to thank the board for their continued support, understanding that that's a really important area. It does have a new fire truck, which is desperately needed by the fire department, and it represents one additional time. Since I've been here, we've only usually brought it forward in May and June, but we brought it forward in April, May, and June for additional board input, for community input. But I think it's a good product, a good solid budget, and with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick. And really would like to thank Patrick for putting this together and working so diligently on putting it together. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay. The budget, I'm just going to talk about the differences between this budget and the budget we discussed in May. In the water fund, there's absolutely no change. Well, there's a slight change. I'll talk to it in a minute, but there's no financial change. Wastewater fund, there's no change at all. In the general fund, we added $134,000 for the purchase of a fire truck. That's a 5-year lease or a 6-year lease. It's a 5-year lease, I think at 4.5%, whatever we can fund it at. In the water department, the previous budget had some staffing costs under resource conservation. I transferred those back into the operational part of the water fund, and what we've done is we've included an admin technician 2 position in the admin department to work for the district engineer, and that person will be committed to doing a lot of resource conservation work. And the way that money gets charged to the water fund is through the overhead allocation. So we are going to be committed to doing some resource conservation work. It's just not shown directly in the budget as a staff under resource conservation because the staff person is actually an admin. The general fund is balanced, $4.5 million in revenue, $4.5 million in expenditures, net zero budget. The wastewater fund is balanced, $2.5 million in revenue, $2.5 million in expenditures for no change to the fund balance. The water fund has 3 components. There's operations, and this is exactly like we had in May. Operations, a $34,000 surplus. Capital cost recovery and the sustainable water facility, $16,000 surplus in operations, and the SWF is $116,000 deficit. So the net deficit in the water fund is $65,000. And there's 2 capital projects in the water fund, the Santa Rosa Creek project, which is currently projected at almost $93,000 deficit. And when we close that project out, that deficit will have to come out of the water fund balance. And then the San Simeon Creek project, or the SWF, where right now we have a $411,000 surplus, meaning we have $411,000 more in revenues than in projected expenditures. The bottom line here is that we anticipate $9.4 million in revenues this year. You're authorizing $11.6 million in expenditures. So there's almost $2.2 million more in expenditures than in revenues. The sources of that $2.2 million are the cash reserves in the sustainable water facility, 1.6. We actually have over $2 million in that fund, but only 1.6 million of them are committed. The general fund is going to loan the wastewater fund $551,000. And then the water fund has a net deficit of $15,000. So that's where that all the extra expenditures are financed. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we are going to now then open this for public hearing and for public comment. And we have a request for public comment from Jerry McKinnon.
Jerry McKinnon, Cambrian, For the uneducated, I need some help with the definition of enterprise fund. I was under the impression that the enterprise fund is fully funded by the payments to the enterprise from our water bill or from our sewer bill. Now, with this budget, in order to make things work out, the wages of the staff are being transferred to the allocated overhead. The allocated overhead then goes to the district office as a part of its general fund. Would that mean then that is no longer whatever the word is I'm looking for? Hasn't that taken a part of the word I started out with and move it into a general fund classification? Because
Why don't you finish your public comment and then
I'll end it with a question mark.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
The original statement was absolutely correct. Enterprise funds generate the revenues to pay all their expenditures themselves. So we have two enterprise funds. We have a water enterprise and a wastewater enterprise fund. Then we have the general fund, which is staffed by people who aren't in either one of the enterprise funds, but the general fund provides services to those enterprise funds. And so the general fund charges the water fund and the wastewater fund for the services it provides. So as far as if a staff person works half of their time for the water department, then half of that person's general fund expenditures are charged to the water department. So the enterprise funds, the water and the wastewater fund, end up paying for all the services they receive from the general fund. And what's left in the general fund is expenditures which can't be allocated, and those are covered by general fund revenues. Did that answer your question?
I guess so.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, we have no further request on this item for public comment, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will now discuss and consider the proposed final budget for the fiscal year 2016-2017. Discussion?
Yes, thank you, President Robinette. As Mr. O'Reilly, good Irishman, thank you, indicated, this is the third time that we've seen the budget with a few tweaks, and I think he did a terrific job in putting it together. I'm especially pleased that this year we've been able to fund a new fire truck, which we have badly needed, and the community, I think, is very supportive of us going forward with making that purchase. So with that, I would move adoption of Resolution 25-216, approving the final CCSD budget for FY 2016-17.
Second the motion?
Yes.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this budget as submitted for the next fiscal year. Let's do a roll call. Not hard to count.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Sanders?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Okay, so motion passes 3-0. Okay, that concludes the items for public hearing today under item 8, hearings and appeals. And with that, we will take a break. Item 9, so please take your seats. Where's Kathy? Oh, goodness, how embarrassing. Here's Kathy. Not a problem. All right. We will now begin with item 9A, and General Manager Gruber, would you like to introduce that?
Yes, item 9A is discussion and consider regarding May 22nd, 2014 action, suspending outstanding intent to serve letters, and consideration of lifting the suspension. And with that, Madam President, I'll turn it over to District Counsel Tim Carmel.
Thank you, General Manager Gruber. Madam President, members of the board, this item is to consider lifting the suspension that was placed on water service connections back in May of 2014. At that time, you suspended the ability of any outstanding will serves to connect to the district's water and sewer systems. There are 8 will serve letters that are affected by that action. One of those will serve letters is in a position to actually connect at this point in time. The other 7 either have withdrawn their permit applications from the county or are waiting through the county's development review process. So with regard to that one single-family home that's in a position to connect, you may want to consider lifting it with regard to that specific single-family home. It is it's on Evelyn Court. It's let's see, it's parcel number 013.084.051. And again, you know we have a demand offset program, so if you were allow him to connect, water supply would actually increase. I know that seems counterintuitive, but that's the case. With regard to the other 7, perhaps the board would direct us to bring those back if you're interested in moving forward with lifting the suspension at all. Bring them back on a case-by-case basis when they're in a position to connect. If you did allow that one property to connect, he would be responsible for a connection fee of $12,688. So that would be the net fiscal impact. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Okay, Director Sanders.
Madam President, I've been struggling with this. My recommendation is that we postpone action on this until after the board considers whether or not it is appropriate to continue with the stage 3 condition that has been declared. And so with that, I would recommend that this be postponed to the August meeting. And at the August meeting, the district board also consider whether or not it would be appropriate to lift the stage 3 condition.
Okay. We have a request for public comment on this, but I think we will move then to have it continued to August. And so on the public comment, we have 3 requests. We are actually not going to move this item forward today. So I'm not sure if you want to comment today or not, but you may if you like. Okay, the first person is Tina Dickinson, but we will be taking no action today.
I understand that. Tina Dickinson. I think it's a wise move on Director Sanders' part to postpone this. Lifting stage 3 in August at the height of summer with what we've seen 100 miles south of us with fires and the threat with this forest that we have and the issues there would certainly not be a wise move. The other question I have related to this is the second tracer test. When I spoke to Jeff Densmore this week, I asked him if he'd heard anything regarding the second tracer test, because a month or 2 ago it was brought up at a board meeting that was going to take place in July. Mr. Densmore told me at DDW he has not received a proposal from the district yet on the second tracer test. So, here we go, cart before the horse. We need to get that out of the way, I would think, before we're issuing connections. So that's another issue. On the Wogu property, the Evelyn Court property, I recall from an NCAC meeting that individual actually was going to be, it was 44 units of water every 2 months. Is that the case? Do you have anything before you where this individual somehow was going to get 44 units of water every 2 months, when the rest of us are trying to get by on 50 gallons a day per person? I just bring that up because there was certainly an issue at NCAC regarding this particular property. And by the way, the building's already begun on the property. So I'm sure you may be not aware of it, but there's construction already on this property. Well, so I leave it at that, but I absolutely would agree that it needs to be postponed, and lifting the stage 3 in August seems rather odd to me as a Cambrian who has been really, really trying very hard. The demand offset that legal counsel brought up, we don't even have a conservation program anymore. That was based on a conservation program that was implemented. We no longer have a conservation specialist. I haven't heard about demand offset for 2 years or more. So where that now suddenly comes into play, I have to question that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I want to speak first on the possibility of giving yourselves the authority of a case-by-case basis. If you postpone this till August, please take up this page 2 of this particular item, because there aren't any cases here other than the one you're looking at today. All the rest, that they have expired or been withdrawn. So you don't have any other cases to look at case by case. So please don't give yourself the authority to do that, because that might cover some new cases that pop up, and I, as a public citizen, would like to comment on that before you do it. I'm very intrigued on page 1 of your proposal at the phrase, or by a change in availability of resources. That's about as vague as you can get, and I'm assuming it might have to do with the whatever it's called now, acronym, the water plant out there, but there's no clarity on what that means. So you are not justifying, by using that phrase, awarding this, whether it's will serve letter or intent to serve connection. You use both phrases and they aren't the same, so I'm sort of wondering about that as well. I'm really intrigued with Ms. Dickinson's comment that this Wogu property came up in NCAC, because I recall hearing about that as well in their minutes. And I don't see how we can reduce our water use by giving a property the use of 44 units as their norm. So please, if you bring this up in August, be very specific about the property you're looking at. Don't just give us a little description here under single-family residential. Tell us who it is and what they're about, so that we can then comment with some substance. I would also like to say that in addition to the conservation question, we've had no reports lately about the retrofit points. We've had no reports about rebates. Where is the conservation program for the CCSD board? I think we really need a substantive update. I'm sure if Director Rice were here, she would be looking and shaking her head yes, because she constantly brings up conservation. And conservation is part of the question. What is your objective for our water use? 70%? 60%? I don't know. So please come back and be explicit as a board about the policies that you are claiming that you purport. Thank you.
Thank you. And next on 9A, Laura Schwartz. Tim, can you reset?
Okay, good afternoon, board and staff and everybody out there. This comment's going to be a little bit different than what I had thought about, because Director Sanders had postponed this. And the reason it was a little different, because I confirmed with Mr. Greshams that we are in a stage 3, and then on your own water use restrictions, it says, that we can't connect any water, we can't have any connections under a stage 3, even if they have an intent to serve letter and everything. And I didn't realize if it had been constructed or not, but it's in your own rulings that you're not supposed to be connecting anything under a stage 3 with any kind of intent to serve letter. The second part of my comment is just a little different. You did pass with the consent agenda to go from a 5 to 10 member of the build-out reduction plan. And this sort of ties into that because the build-out reduction plan is a required part of the EIR for the EWS. Anyhow, so
got that right. That was very good.
Okay,
It's just
okay,
fine.
I got that right. And the thing is, there is going to be a cost associated with this required build-out reduction plan. And with the last build-out reduction plan, there was ways of financing it, but somehow it's going to be different at this point, and we don't know how those fees, the cost of the build-out reduction plan is going to be presented to the community. So before we do that, before we have more people connecting, we need to see where those fees are going to come from. Are they going to come from the community at large? Are they going to come from people adding on? And if we don't collect when they add on now, before the BRP is in place, how do we know how much to charge anybody? And you can't go back and collect those fees if you don't collect them when they're connecting. So that it's a financial question until the 10 people on the build-out reduction plan can make a recommendation to the CCSD of how this is going to be financed. I don't know how we can pass the charges on to the appropriate people without knowing what the charges are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are then going to not take up this item today.
Yeah, I move that this item be continued to the August meeting, and that in August, the board also consider the stage 3 condition and whether or not it should be lifted.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. It will be continued in August. Okay. Moving to item then 9B. Like for who's going to make the introduction?
I will.
Okay, Mr. Carmel, would you? Okay.
How eager. Thank you.
All right.
Madam President, members of the board, this item is to consider a revised employment agreement with your general manager. The only change in the employment agreement is a 6% salary increase. That 6% increase was unanimously directed to me to present to Mr. Gruber. He's accepted that 6% increase and signed the agreement. Obviously, that increase has an impact on benefits. The overall impact of the district is $11,230 a year. I would note that General Manager Gruber's been here for 5 years. He's received 2 pay increases in that time frame, totaling 7.1%, which equals about 1.8% a year, which lags a little behind the cost of living. But with that said, I turn it back to you for consideration of the revised employment agreement.
Okay, thank you for that. We have requests for public comment on 9B, so we will start with that. First, we have Mark Rochefort.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. My name is Mark Rochefort.
Tim.
My wife and I live on Windsor Boulevard. I support the resolution to amend General Manager Jerry Gruber's proposed employment contract. Specifically, I support the proposed 6% increase in base compensation, which when put in context is reasonable, indeed modest. Jerry Gruber has not received an increase in base compensation since June 2013. In 2015, as with all district management employees, Jerry did receive a 2.1 cost of living adjustment, but that fact is only noteworthy
because in every prior year, Jerry voluntarily waived any cost of living adjustment, even though he was entitled to one under his contract. In short, since the commencement of his employment, Jerry Gruber's base compensation has increased, as indicated, on average, just 1.8% per year. Time does not permit, nor does reason require, that we recount all of the value Jerry brings to the community. Suffice it to say, if you have spent much time here during the past few years, you know the considerable water, wastewater, and other challenges we have faced. Jerry has skillfully guided Cambria toward a place where we all should want to live, a town which has a functional and efficient infrastructure, including sustainable water supply. With the little time I have that remains, I want to discuss the nature of the proceedings that led us to this meeting. Democracy is where a public body in the open air proposes a public action, receives and deliberates community input, and considering such input, adjusts its action in the best interests of the community. Make no mistake, the process to arrive at Jerry Gruber's proposed contract, which is before you, has been open, contemplative, and respectful of the community. In short, this process represents democracy in the highest form, notwithstanding the heated and accusatory rhetoric to the contrary from some among us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Tina Dickinson. Tim.
Tina Dickinson,
Tim.
clearly, Mr. Rochefort, you were not at the June 2nd meeting as the board went into closed session where comments were made from the public.
Please address me.
I am.
At the board. Thank you.
I actually have something to bring to the attention of each one of the directors. And I would have had more. I have more, but they're not here. I share some concerns regarding the general manager. First of all, to make a try to make a distinction between Mr. Ogren and Mr. Gruber. I think you all received the letter from Julie Tacker regarding Mr. Ogren's compensation. He does in fact have two positions, not one, and he will be his salary will be reduced substantially. I think around July 22nd when they hire an accountant. So that now this is from a public records request from Glenn LaJoy, the consultant for Michael Baker International, and April 13th he says, "Hi Jerry and Bob, Jerry Gruber, Bob Greshams. I hope you're both doing well. The spring flies by. I apologize for only a brief appearance on this morning's call. I have discussions items related to build-out reduction, blah, blah, blah. I can't go into the whole thing. I prefer to have the discussion with just the two of you rather than a larger audience." And then he talks about when we can get together. I am very concerned about where things have evolved with regard out to a build-out citizens committee. I am thinking that I am not on the same page with you and the district with regard to assembly of the group, their task, timing, and other related details. I would rather not go into detail on this email, but it is imperative that we talk. General manager then responds, "Your concern, the frickin' thing has become a monster. Can you imagine how this is going to play out? Someone please shoot me." Now, on a more serious note, I will be out of the office on Friday to celebrate my anniversary. How anyone in their right mind has been able to put up with me and my mood swings for the past 21 years is beyond me. Anyway, Glenn, I look forward to a talk with you. This doesn't sound like a general manager who maybe is worthy of a 6% raise to me, and there are other public comment responses where he actually refers to a director of this board. She's included on the email, referring to Director Rice. I don't have the time to read it to you. But I have serious concerns because within the body of the responses of extensive public records request, this was part of it. And believe me, there was way more regarding the BRP. As to what you people established in March for a BR committee to work on finances, and Michael Baker International, Mr. LaJoy says, no, we don't want finances in there. Wait till the draft EIR is done. Then we'll discuss finances. Does the BRP committee know that? Do they?
Thank you.
For goodness sakes, let's get some transparency in this body.
Let's keep going.
Madam President, do you want comments from the board now, or do you want to wait until
at the
Okay,
end,
thank
please?
you.
Okay, next on 9B, we have Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I did not speak on this item on the agenda the previous meetings when it came up, but I want to raise a couple of questions about this item 9B and the contract for the general manager, please. I want you to look at page 2. And page 2 of the description of the employment agreement, before you get to the employment agreement, it says, and I'm not questioning it says, Mr. Gruber has also absorbed the position of the utilities manager. The public was informed, Madam President and Sir Vice President, the public was informed that Bob Gressens, or Greshens, I still don't know quite how to pronounce it, was the utilities manager. And now we're informed that it has been absorbed into the work of the general manager. That is so crucial, a disposition of resources in this town, that I hope if this kind of thing happens again, you tell us. I assume it's true because it's in here, but maybe it's not true. I don't know. I want to ask about the agreement. I would like you to look, please, at page 2 of the agreement. It refers to good cause, has no, we don't want to take a majority vote of the board in determining good cause. I think that's very interesting. It's probably standard text. But look at the next page. Employee shall accrue 20 days vacation leave per year, and employee shall accrue 10 days administrative leave per year. I'm not sure what you mean by accrue. Do you mean carry over from fiscal year to the next fiscal year what is not used in one fiscal year? And as you know, that is a huge question throughout government in this country right now, where people are losing stuff that they thought was carrying over. But my question then is, does this general manager get any sick leave? Because there's no mention of it in your agreement. And so, Madam President, if you would please inform Mr. Gruber that if you agree to the contract today, you are telling that man that he may not get sick under your oversight. Thank you. Oh, no, I'm not done. I want to commend Amanda Rice, the director of this board, for what she put into the Cambrian today. You know my position on the changes I've had in my estimation of Mr. Gruber. I'm not going to dump on that man today. I don't have the time to do that. I want to say that you are not public in your evaluation of this man's work. Just because you bring this before us, we know nothing about what you think of his work, other than you like it. So tell us the reasons, other than maybe he's maybe he's not. I don't know. But you give us such sparse information, Madam President, that I get more, as you can tell, frustrated by the month, because my questions don't get answered, and when the answers come, they are as thin as that little creature I found on the sand the other day that I think was the thin eggs of a clam. That thin.
Next on 9B, Sherry Bell, excuse me.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to once again object to the general manager contract. This revised contract, albeit only for 1 year rather than 6, that's a step in the right direction. I object to the 6%. I object to the 9 months notice, specifically that he can't be terminated within a period of 3 months before or 3 months after an election. That I don't think that makes much sense. I would like to also bring up the Amanda Rice's viewpoint section today, which is very illuminating and suggests that this board is not a very cohesive unit, and if she doesn't know what's going on with the board, as a member of the board, how can we clearly, the members of this community clearly don't have a clue. That and the other, what I would like to suggest is that any contract be delayed until after the November election. Aside from Amanda's article, there's the one that was put in the Cal Coast News by Josh Friedman yesterday, where he has been doing some research on the salary for the general manager. Numbers aren't jiving. The numbers that have been reported to the, whoever they report them to the California State Controller's Office is one thing. The staff report is one number. That's a different number. The report also states that district officials have ignored several phone calls and have opted not to respond to Cal Coast News questions regarding the discrepancies between the state reports and the CSD staff report. According to this article, we don't know what he's made in the past, what he really makes now, and so to give him 6% of who knows what that's just kind of leaving us more in the dark. He does some interesting comparison of the general manager in Templeton, who, with the salary of the general manager there, the cost of the administration, and so on and so forth. But in any case, I would like to have this contract put on hold until after the November election. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on 9B, we have Jerry McKinnon.
Jerry McKinnon again. Just my simple approach to things. I have a budget at home, and I have a line that I budget the number of dollars that I have available to spend on gasoline. And down at the bottom, I have a line that shows a little surplus. Now, when gasoline prices go up and it's beyond my budget, it takes away from my surplus. When gasoline prices go down, it adds to my surplus. So I'm just kind of curious. What happens to the administrative budget if his raise is put into effect? Does that decrease the surplus? If his raise is denied, does that increase the surplus? I'm just curious, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And next on item 9B, Mel McCulloch. Tim.
Madam President, board members, I'm Mel McCulloch, and I'm here, a resident of Cambria, and I'm here today speaking on my own behalf as a resident and not representing members of the Chamber of Commerce in any way. I'm a little baffled at some of the speakers and some of the comments I've heard today. Madam President, I don't know whether they listen to these staff reports or not. It seems like they come here with deaf ears and then try to throw out their venom to harm the community. With that, I've known Jerry since he started to work as a utilities manager. When Jerry advanced to general manager, we all know that he took on the responsibilities of utility manager. I have lived full-time in Cambria since 1986 and have known and worked with several CCSD managers. I can assure you, none of them have been as qualified and had the large number of work tasks to perform as Jerry Gruber has had and currently has. Jerry is a finisher, he gets the jobs done, and he is by far the most qualified of the past managers I've worked with. The increase being discussed today is well within what Jerry deserves and should be compensated for because of his capabilities and workload. In fact, in my personal opinion, the increase is not enough for what we get from Jerry in the work that he does. I would suggest something higher. I hope everyone here has read what Jerry's qualifications are and what his responsibilities are for the district. I would like to take time to read them to those here today because they are so very impressive, but there are so many time would not allow. Jerry's job is not just a community service district manager, it also includes duties of a city manager. So he has 3 responsibilities as he works for us here today. During the time I've known and worked with Jerry since I have been the president of the Chamber of Commerce, I've asked for his assistance on many projects that needed to be coordinated between the Chamber and the CCSD. Not once was I turned down on the help and cooperation I needed. Not once did we not complete the task to the satisfaction of this community. Jerry does not know the words cannot do. Cambria is very fortunate to have Jerry as our CCSD manager, and in my opinion, he is entitled to have the new employment approved today. I strongly urge and support the board to approve the employment agreement for Jerry as proposed here today. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further requests for public comment on 9B. And Mr. Carmel, did you want to reflect on a couple of things? How in this, the only thing that's changing, in fact, isn't this pretty much the same contract? These other conditions?
It's the existing contract with a 6% salary increase.
So there's nothing here that hasn't always been in place other than that?
That's correct.
Okay. And on our closed session, are you allowed to talk about any?
Not substantively, but I did indicate that the board unanimously directed me to make that offer to Mr. Gruber, and all 5 board members.
That was unanimous.
That's correct.
Yes.
Madam Chair, can legal counsel add to that the names of the 2 board members who were on the committee that negotiated with Mr. Gruber? I'll do it for you.
You can do it
if
for me
it's
because the ad hoc's changed a couple times, but
Right.
the last one.
Vice President Thompson and Director Amanda Rice. And is it not the case that Directors Thompson and Rice brought the recommendation back to the board and both recommended its approval?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam President, I have one more comment to make if I can.
Yes, Director Sanders.
Reference was made to the letter from Julie Tacker. I'm always curious as to why she seems to want to weigh in on Cambria issues since she's from Los Osos, but nonetheless she does. In her letter, she justifies Pavo Ogren's salary at the Oceano Community Services District by stating that he assumed the role of 2 positions. So did our general manager. Whether Bob Gressens is now the utility manager or not is irrelevant. The fact is that position, the body that fills that position, was eliminated at a savings of how much to the district?
$130,000.
$130,000 a year, which is twice the amount saved by the Oceano Community Services District for eliminating the accounting position. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, it's my information that notwithstanding the fact that the Oceano Community Services District is going to be hiring an accounting manager, Mr. Ogren's salary is not going to be reduced.
Yes, it is.
Well, we'll see. Thank you.
Okay, and Vice President Thompson?
Yeah, I just want to comment a bit on Cal Coast News, which as a journalism graduate, I doubt that any of my professors would have considered the Cal Coast News a legitimate news organization. The article was very, very poorly written. A lot of misstatement of fact. Talked about Templeton CSD, which has only, as I understand it, the responsibility for water delivery and none of the other responsibilities that we have in this community, such as parks and recreation. Thanks for being so courteous. Such as parks and recreation, fire, trash, the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, this Veterans Hall, and et cetera. At any rate, I'm going to support this. I think it's a very appropriate and a very modest raise. As Mr. Rochefort indicated, this was brought forward last month, and we heard from the community, and we're bringing back something that I think really reflects what the community supports, and so I will support this.
As will I.
Okay, Mr. Carmel would like to speak, and then we're ready.
And I just throw this out there because I wanted to clarify the issue. That letter, Ms. Tacker's letter, was delivered to me. So I called Pavo. He's a friend of mine. I called him before the meeting, and I asked him directly whether his salary is going to be impacted, and it's not. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm assuming that Pavo knows how his salary will be affected. So I think that's probably very accurate.
Thank you. Director Sanders?
Madam President, I move approval of resolution number 28-2016, approving an employment agreement with Jerome D. Gruber.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call.
Director Sanders?
Yes.
Vice President Thompson?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Yes. Motion passes 3-0. Okay, moving on to item 9C.
Yes, Madam President, I'll go ahead and introduce this, and then District Council Tim Carmel is going to present it in more detail. Item 9C is discussion and consideration of adoption of Resolution 29-20616, amending the bylaws relating to the time of the regular meetings of the Board of Directors and establishing meeting times for the remainder of the 2016. That should say calendar year in there, but we just forgot to put calendar year. So.
Yes.
I'm lucky again. This is not new to you. It's been in front of you several times. You have a resolution in your packet that will take the bylaw times out of the meeting times out of your bylaws for regular meetings and allow you to establish them by separate resolution. In the resolution in your packet, there's also blanks for the rest of the meeting times for calendar year 2016. So staff's recommending that you fill in those times. The ad hoc committee is recommending that the August meeting take place at 4 o'clock. The rest of them are blank. So with that, I'll turn it back to you to complete the calendar year times for regular meetings in the resolution and then take action to adopt the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Board discussion?
Question of the General Counsel. So from meeting to meeting, if we adopt what has been proposed, we can adjust the time and the date of the succeeding meeting. Is that correct?
You'll be able to do that by resolution, but we're hoping that today that you establish for the balance of 2016 a meeting schedule so that there's some clarity in the public.
And we do have the one for August already scheduled for 4 o'clock, and so we need to decide then 12:30 or 4 o'clock for the remainder during this year, keeping in mind daylight savings time, which I think ultimately finally comes into play.
That's correct. And I noticed that I put July in there, and I know the meeting in July is dark, so that doesn't need to.
Yes, and thank you for that, because I've had some questions even today. We are not scheduled to have a meeting in July, and so we'll make sure that everyone does know that. So on the remainder of the, for the 4 months throughout December, we can go ahead and establish whatever your pleasure is.
I'm fine with, as I've indicated in the past, as having an occasional night meeting. My constituents have made it very loud and clear to me that they prefer not to go out in the evening and spend 4 hours dealing with the things that we obviously are required to deal with. They would prefer not to do that, and I think especially after daylight savings time is over, it's going to be even more of an issue in terms of the time. So again, I'm fine with the 4 o'clock. Beyond that, I'll show up whenever you folks want to meet, but I don't necessarily think it's we need to hold every meeting at 4 o'clock. I think people would be opposed to that.
And it was that Director Rice and I did work on this as the ad hoc on this too, and I think that what we have here is always what you hope for, and that is thoughtful discussion and compromise. The one night meeting we had really was a night meeting, and it started much later, and then as we've evolved in this, and the board has talked about it, and in fact it was Director Rice that recommended, well, 4 o'clock would be considered an evening meeting. So I think 4 o'clock is a for our other scheduled meetings is a good time, better than 6 perhaps for many people. So we have one 4 o'clock, and so I think daylight savings time ends at the very end of October. Would we want our October meeting to be another 4 o'clock?
Again, for myself, I really don't care. I did a little survey during the night meeting that we had, and essentially I think it showed that there might have been 10 people here that don't normally attend these meetings, and at 10 o'clock when that meeting concluded, the only folks that were here are people that are normally here at the meeting, regardless of what time it is. And so
meaning us and the staff?
Yeah. But again, I think that as
of course,
Director Sanders has said before, that attendance at the meeting is driven by the agenda. And so I don't think it's necessarily driven by the time. I'm respectful of folks that work during the day, but my friends that work during the day oftentimes also have children, and they're involved with their children's activities in the evening, and so I don't think that they're any more inclined to attend a meeting than they would if it were during the daytime. Again, I'm fine with an occasional evening or 4 o'clock meeting, but I certainly would be opposed to scheduling them all at 4 o'clock.
Madam Chair, in the interest of compromise, and since we will now have the capability of changing the meeting schedule without going through a huge rigmarole, I would suggest that we keep the meeting for August as proposed at 4 p.m., September 12:30, October 4 p.m., November and December 12:30 p.m.
Is that a motion? Or further
well,
discussion?
That's, for further discussion,
it, but,
perhaps.
That would be my thought.
Yeah. If you move it, I'll second that.
Okay, well, I will move adoption of resolution number 29-2016, approving a revision to the Cambria Community Services District bylaws relating to the time of its regular meetings. And with respect to section 2 of the resolution, I further move that the meeting time for August be set at 4 p.m. The meeting time for the September 2016 meeting be set at 12:30 p.m. October 2016, 4 p.m., and November and December of 2016, 12:30 p.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries 3-0. Okay, moving on now to item 9D. General Manager Gruber, if you would introduce that, please.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. Item 9D is consideration of voting to elect a representative to the CSDA Board of Directors, Coastal Network Seat B. The recommendation from staff on this is it recommends that the Board of Directors consider and vote for a candidate as a representative for the CSDA Board of Directors, Coastal Network C, and authorize the board president to execute a ballot and submit on behalf of the CCSD. Just a brief discussion, and I think this is important because it outlines the three candidates. The Cambria Community Service District is a member of the California Special Districts Association, otherwise known as the CSDA. CSDA is governed by an 18-member board of directors elected by mail ballots. The board consists of 3 directors from each 6 networks located throughout California. The CCSD, I'm going to have problems with this one. The CCSD is located within that coastal network. CSDA has requested that the CCSD vote to elect a representative to the CSDA Board of Directors for the Coastal Network Seat B for a 3-year term. Ballots are due by 5 p.m. on August 5th of 2016. There are 3 candidates for Seat B. Anthony Bear Calvans from the San Miguel Community Services District, Jeff Hodge from the Santa Ynez Community Service District, and Sharon Rose from the Goleta Sanitary District. Information about the 3 candidates is attached for reference. It is recommended that the Board of Directors consider the candidates and select one to be the Coastal Network Seat B representative and authorize the board president to execute the ballot and submit it on behalf of the CCSD. So with that being said, Madam President, there is information regarding the 3 candidates. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the board. And if we could answer as staff any questions regarding the staff report, we'd be more than happy to at this time.
Thank you. Discussion? Director Sanders?
Madam President, I'm impressed with the resume of Mr. Jeff Hodge, and I would move that we support his appointment as recommended.
I concur. I think he has probably the greatest diversity of activity, and besides which, he's a Rotary guy, even though I'm not.
He's a Rotarian,
yeah.
right.
So I would second the motion.
Well, we have a Rotary guy and a lady.
Ladies can join.
Yes, and that would be a good next step, I guess, for the lady candidate. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we nominate Jeff, and so any further discussion? Okay, then all those in favor of our vote going for Jeff Hodge, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 3-0. Okay, item 9E. Who would like to introduce 9E? General Manager Gruber.
Yes, Madam President. I'll go ahead and introduce it, give a brief introduction, and then turn it over to Patrick O'Reilly, our finance manager. And that is discussion and consideration to receive a draft reserve policy. The board at their last board meeting had asked us to draft a reserve policy. We're not necessarily asking you to approve it in its current format. We brought this back because I think staff and the board understand the importance of having a comprehensive draft policy. It's one of those things that can be brought back for further discussion based on recommendations and direction from the board. But also it is a document that should, however it is ultimately approved upon, that it is able to evolve and change based on the needs of the district, but also the availability of our resources. So with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick. And Patrick, I appreciate all the work you put in on this and bringing this forward to the board.
Madam President, members of the board, members of the public, The general manager and I met with the budget committee to discuss the direction that we should proceed in concerning the cash reserve policy. There are many advantages to having one. It protects our assets. It gives us goals and objectives for how we manage our assets. And also, as President Robinette pointed out during our meeting, it gives us a tool for making sure that if, when we spend money, we recover that money. If we loan general fund money to the water fund, it'll be obvious, and we'll have to take steps to make sure that we replenish the reserve. I have a brief presentation. This is it's a fairly simple policy. Staff would like to keep it short, but we would like to have it cover all three areas of operations, and we would recommend that we have a separate policy for each of the general fund, water fund, and wastewater funds. Okay, there we go. Just as a place to start, we're suggesting in the general fund that we have three different kinds of reserves: budget stabilization reserve, which would basically just be available for those occasions when you don't have quite as much revenue as you projected in the budget, or when you have some extraordinary expenses that weren't projected in the budget, and you don't have to panic. You have a little money you can go to. Liability contingency and emergency disaster reserve, that would be funds that would be set aside for occurrences that really are disasters, earthquakes and that sort of thing, where you need immediate response and you need to have a certain amount of money to be able to dedicate to that. And then a working capital reserve would be intended to provide funds during the year that while we're waiting to receive our taxes. Our two biggest sources of revenue in the general fund, our biggest source of revenue in the general fund are property taxes. And we only get two slugs a year, two significant slugs in October and April. So if you don't, between July the 1st and October, when you receive, or December, when you receive the first amount of money, you need to have some money available to operate, and that's what a working capital reserve would be. The amounts here, if we use 10%, if we use 10% for the first and the third, and 15% for the second reserve, these are the amounts that we would set aside right now. This is based on the operating expenditures in the general fund, 10% for budget stabilization, 10% for working capital, and 15% for liability contingency. So if we adopted this policy tonight, we'd need $1.4 million in reserves in the general fund. Water fund, similar thing, same kind of reserve components, except there's a fourth reserve component that can apply to enterprise funds, and that's a rate stabilization reserve. Basically, public agencies have two ways to fund major capital projects. You can float bond, actually you have three ways. You can float bonds. You can, if you need a new wastewater plant, for instance, you can sell bonds, and then you have to increase rates dramatically at the time to be able to pay for those bonds so you can pay for your wastewater plant. The other way to do it is to start off 20 years in advance and say, we know we're going to need a new wastewater plant in 20 years, and if we accumulate $100,000 a year for 20 years, we'll have enough money to pay for it. So you increase rates slightly, and then you set aside that money every year for 20 years. I haven't proposed that here. It requires a Prop 218 election, and I'm not suggesting we do that right now, but that is another alternative for the water fund and the wastewater fund. In the water fund, if we have 10% for budget stabilization and working capital, and 15% for disaster reserve, the reserves required would be about $525,000. The wastewater fund is the exact same thing, and the reserves there would be about $450,000. So we're looking at around $2.5 million for the whole district for reserves based on these criteria. We really need a comprehensive analysis of that to see if it's reasonable, but this is just kind of a starting point. How do you fund reserves? What this policy suggests is that in the general fund, we use excess revenues and one-time revenues, and that's almost every year in the general fund we have excess revenues. We budget more, or we receive more revenues than we spend. That's what we try to do. And if it's $50,000 a year or whatever, we'd be able to put that, we'd buy this policy, have to put that in our reserve funds. One-time revenues, that would be like the oil money that the district received quite a few years ago, something like that. In water and wastewater, we could have excess revenues if that happens. It hasn't happened recently, but it could happen. Or we could fund reserves through one-time revenues. Rate stabilization reserves, connection fees could be applied to that, and then monthly operating charges, which would have to be approved through a Prop 218 election. Use of reserves, Director Sanders made a proposal a couple of board meetings ago that it would require a vote of 4 members of the board to use the reserve. That's certainly an option, something that we'd recommend be discussed. More typically, it's just supported by an approval of the majority of the board, but the board has to actually vote. The general manager can't just go out and spend them, or the staff can't go spend them. The exception to that is the working capital reserve, which typically doesn't require board action because it happens every year. We start our year on July the 1st, and we don't get taxes until 6 months later. So we need to have the authority to spend that reserve every year. And Director Sanders also suggested a small separate emergency reserve that the GM can use without approval of the board. And so that's being offered here, although it's not included in this policy. We have to change the policy based on the direction of the board. That's my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions and participate in the discussion.
Director Sanders?
Thank you, Patrick. Good presentation. So the reserves would simply be deposited with the LAIF and would sit in the LAIF and earn what little interest? We can't take the money and go to Las Vegas and put it on the hard 8.
We can't go to Las Vegas. I work for public agencies that have invested reserves in longer-term assets than LAIF, so they get a better return, and that's something the budget committee could look at.
Yeah.
I've bought stocks and bonds when I worked for a city, but they had an investment committee, and it was overseen by people that knew what they were doing, not me.
I'm not suggesting we get wild and crazy with the money.
You do have the opportunity to do longer-term investing because you're probably not going to use these reserves on a frequent basis.
Madam President.
We have a request for public comment.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, before we move further. We do have a request for public comment. Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I forget to say I'm Elizabeth Bettenhausen. I live on Park Hill, along with lots of does and fawns and other creatures. I want to parenthetically say, Madam President, I'm going to write you an email asking simply for clarification as to whether your contract with the general manager gives him sick leave, because I didn't hear anybody talk about that. So I'm really curious, and I'd like to know. So I'll just drop you a note about that, since it's not explicit anywhere. I want to talk about this draft. I really, once again, commend the finance officer. I don't know who decided to hire him. Yep, this guy knows what he's doing, and he has an open mind. When he does something erroneous, he puts it in his report and corrects it. I think that's really laudable. So would you please convey to him, Madam President, my high congratulations in that regard.
With pleasure.
I would like to look at this draft, and it's certainly still a draft. I'm curious, the draft of the policy, I assume, will contain no concrete steps toward actualizing the policy, to putting it in effect. I understand the percentages. I think that's a good way to start. But if I think about this now, the budget you just adopted has none of this in because this is still a draft policy. But are you saying that if you actually adopt this policy, you would every year budget, say, for example, 10% for the budget stabilization reserve for general administration, so that every budget would show that that's what you're doing for all of these reserves? I think that would be wonderful, because then we'd have real clarity as to whether or not we're going to have to to take out a loan to do it at some point. But this is a draft, and it's, I'm sure you will make it much clearer when it has its revision. I would like a little more explicit mention in your revision to the fact that the sustainable water facility, that thing out there, I guess is how I refer to it often, is that's all subsumed under the water fund, within the water fund. And therefore, any operating shortfall, as we're having in the pending fiscal year now with that budget, we don't have enough money to operate the plant. And so once again, we borrow that money from somebody else. So what we're saying is that the rate increase that we voted for as a community by majority, that covers the working operations of this plant, that rate increase is insufficient, as is the new one, to prevent budget shortfall. And so I wanted it explicit. Where do we draw the money from when there's no money to operate that plant? And one last suggestion. It's a bit clearer to me now why there's no percentage given for the rate stabilization reserve. But I would think it would be very wonderfully audacious of you as public servants to say that you do want to put a specific percentage in there, even if it's 1% a year increase, but be very careful to tell the population of the town, who are ratepayers, what they might expect for rate increases year by year in order to have such a reserve fund. You will recall, I'm sure, that I brought this up back when the interim finance officer was here, and she drew on these very helpful materials. And I can't tell you how I would rejoice if you actually had an official reserve policy that you voted on as a board. It would make me much more comfortable as a ratepayer. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Well, okay, we're bringing the, is it on this item, Jerry? Are you talking on 9E?
Yeah, we're on E.
We're on E. Would you like to be on that? Okay. Well, okay, we have another request for public comment, Jerry McKinnon, on 9E. You want to talk on this, right? Okay. Good timing.
Jerry McKinnon, just another question for my education. When I look at the percentages, it's 15, 20, 15. I add them up, that's 50%. Where's the other 50% going? Is it just held in reserve in case you overdo the 15, 20, or 15? Is that the way it works? Question.
Thank you.
First, I'd address Ms. Bettenhausen's comments. The percents are goals for the total amount of the reserve. So if the general fund budget is $3 million, and the goal to have in that reserve would be $300,000 in one component of that reserve, and it wouldn't change from year to year. It would stay the same. So if this year we had a $3 million budget and we had $300,000 in there, and next year we had a $300,000 budget and we had $300,000 in there, it would require no additional contribution. It's not an annual contribution. Actually, the way this policy is set up, the only way we could fund it, the goal amount may be $300,000, but the only way it's funded is through excess revenues and one-time revenues. So if we have no excess revenues or we have no one-time revenues, there's no contribution to the reserve that year. So you'd never see it in the budget. It's not a budgeted item. Doesn't mean it couldn't be, but in the way it's proposed here, it wouldn't. You would never have a budget for a contribution to the reserve.
General Manager Gruber?
And if the board wanted to bring back a revised reserve policy with changes regarding that percentage, then that's when it would need to be adjusted on an annual basis based on the budget process. If the budget increases, as Patrick said, say $3 million in the general fund, say if the budget increases, we get the fire department bigger and things like that, say if it went up to $4 million, then of course that 10 to 15% would have to be adjusted as part of the budget process. So there may be instances, 2 instances where it would go up. That's if you want that percentage higher based on a needs analysis and available revenue, or if the budget continued to grow, get bigger.
Thank you. And I want, go ahead, and then I want to comment.
There's nothing that prohibits the board from passing a budget that has 100,000 more or 100,000 less in expenditures than what we think we're going to have in revenue, and then that 100,000 would go into the reserve. So it doesn't restrict you from being able to contribute to reserve. It just doesn't require you to do that.
Okay. And I only just wanted to say one thing. As part of the ad hoc, Vice President Thompson and I, of course, work with you. And I really appreciate when we talk about the unrestricted account, the reserves. To me, the best feature that we've never had before is when there is need and it does get expended, that there is something built in on how it might be restored. I really appreciate that. We've not had that in the past. Director Sanders?
Madam President, I propose that, well, first of all, before I make a proposal, let me say I think that what Patrick has outlined here is an excellent start. I think it's very well thought out, and it relies to some extent on some good precedents, like the city of Atherton, for example. So what I propose is that he report back to us at the August meeting with a proposal for a reserve policy that has some numbers plugged into it, and we can consider at that time whether or not to adopt it.
Okay, and is that a reasonable timeline? Yes. Okay. Is there, okay? This is not a motion, right?
No.
Okay. All right, so then in August, we'll expect to have it back, and we'll be ready then for elaborating on a couple of things there and then have a motion, okay? Okay, thank you. Then now we're moving to item 9F, and General Manager Gruber,
Yes,
would you
Madam
like to
President,
introduce
Board
that?
Member 9F.
Yes,
ma'am.
9F.
Thank you. And I'm going to just let Tim introduce it and discuss it a little bit. But also, there's some quantifiable information in here that I'd like Patrick to comment on regarding where we are with water usage as it relates to surcharges. And it's hard to forecast. One of the most difficult things in the water industry and wastewater industry is hard to forecast your usage. But I think it's one of those things that we need to periodically report back to the board, because we want to make sure that we don't see trends occurring. Trends are significant increases or decreases in an average amount of usage. And when that happens, then we need to let the board know about that. But Tim, if you would, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First, by now you realize that I lost a bet with Jerry, and as a result, I'm giving all the staff reports today.
What was the bet?
We can't get into the details.
Well, I thought you were very popular today. That was good. We like to hear from you.
High stakes bet.
It was a pretty high stakes bet. This item is, again, to consider suspension of enforcement of penalties and surcharges for excessive water use under our current enhanced, well, it's got such a long name, I'd take a minute to read it. There it is. That's the revised enhanced water conservation measures restrictions on the use of potable water and maximum water use allotments. So you took action in February and suspended enforcement for the period from March 1st through June 30th. And I think you also wanted staff to gauge if there would be any impact on water use, if water use would increase. And I think there's some information in the packet that indicates that it hasn't at this point had any impact on water use. Staff brought this back with an opportunity to further extend that suspension of enforcement of penalties and surcharges. They were pretty extreme, as you probably recall, up to 1,000% with regard to some water use. So it's the resolution's before you. It's set up to extend it through December 31st of this year, but obviously it's up to you as to if you want to extend the suspension of enforcement, and if so, how long. Staff will be cognizant of water use, and I'm sure if there's an increase in water use, we'll bring this back quickly, so you'll have an opportunity to revisit the issue. So with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Okay, we have no request for public comment, so...
Matt?
Yeah, you did.
Where did it go? I was looking around for it. Is it Elizabeth Bettenhausen? Yes, please come forward. Oh, the vice president hit it. I don't know why he hit it, but he did. But I thought I saw it earlier, and then I didn't.
Oh, my.
Madam President, I would not begin to speculate.
What happened and where it went, but I thought I saw one, but then I did not.
Nefarious.
Tim, would you reset the time? We're using up per time.
Biden told a member of Congress never to try to guess the motives of anybody, only judge their judgment. And so please assure the Vice President, Madam President, that I will not speculate as to his motives, but I will be very happy that you found.
Ms. Bettenhausen, I'll tap out to the fact I have a poker game tonight.
Oh, thank you, sir. That's very kind of you. I assume my voice carries so much. We don't need to rehearse all that. Correct, Director Robinette telling Director Thompson. I'm getting so repetitive. We have a budget that's overspending. We have surcharges that we aren't charging. The surcharges could make up for some of the deficit in the budget. I think what you're saying here is that we don't need to have 60% conservation. We can keep rising a bit, but since you have no policy as to what number you're rising to, as I said before, I have no idea why you're doing this. These surcharges have raised two questions in my mind. And the billing summary that I get every 2 months, thanks to the district clerk and her assistants, does not reveal who are the big users. It lumps into categories. I want to know, in order to make an evaluation of your action here, who are the big users? And why should we no longer, as of March 1st and now continue, why should we not charge them? Because they go way over their allocation, maybe. I don't know, do they? Because you never, ever tell us. And this question has come up repeatedly, my friends. I would be very grateful, dear board, if you would just email me and say, Elizabeth, you keep asking these questions, but we aren't going to tell you. And we aren't going to tell you because. And then I'd have at least some answer. But at this point, I keep asking the questions and haven't the vaguest idea who in this town is surcharging, is using so much water that they get surcharged. And I suspect that people aren't poor. I suspect that maybe they're commercial and not residential, except for a few of those big residences, they like to drip their water a lot. Tell me, please. Don't make me speculate anymore about anybody's motives. But don't make me speculate either about your judgment. Make it clear to us. And that would be a wonderful amplitude of transparency, Madam President. Thank you very much. And my goodness, it's not 6 o'clock. It's only 10 to 4.
Madam President, first a comment and then a suggestion. Ms. Bettenhausen has asked about the board's policy on the percentage of water use that we're striving for versus what the threshold was when, or before the stage 3 condition was declared. I think the policy is embedded in the water rate increase. It's 70%. That's what the board acted on when the board raised the rates a few months ago. The rate increase was predicated upon 70% usage. So that should answer your question. In light of the fact that 9A has been continued, and since this is somewhat related to the stage 3 issue, I would recommend that this be continued as well to the August meeting to be considered along with 9A.
General Manager Gruber.
Thank you. Point of clarification, I think if it's continued automatically on July 1st, the rates, the surcharges based on the previous resolution will go back into place.
Right, it would run out.
Yeah, it would run out.
It would run out. Yeah. So I think we need to,
that's why we brought this,
yeah.
Brought this back. It's a very, very good point. And because we did not want that to unilaterally happen without input
Yes.
from a policy standpoint.
I've been looking back on page 38 and just looking at our, I love to look at trends, I love to look at historical changes, and what I see here, which really does speak to the good practices of our community, it really is that somehow we have really acquired excellent conservation awareness. Because when I look at just the overall use, and so then that's including water production on acre foot for everyone, and I look at March, if I just even run back a few years, in March, 50 acre foot, 51 acre foot, 48, 45, 54. Then in 2014, when we did put the level 3 emergency into effect, it dropped from 54 acre foot to 34. That is a very significant drop. Then, for some reason, in 2015, it bounced back slightly, 37, but it's still well below the average over the last 10 years. And then this year, for March, we have 36 acre foot. So even with not having the penalties and the surcharges, we're doing good things because we are very careful about our water. We're doing the same thing from this year now in April. We have 37 acre foot approximately. Last year we had 38. We're even better than we were last year when we had the fees and the penalties. Then in May we're up slightly, 40 acre foot this year in 2016, 37 acre foot last year. That was the lowest year, by the way, 38 in 2014, 68 acre foot in May of 2013. So I have to compliment our community for continuing to conserve water, and it wasn't the surcharges and the fees that necessarily were holding people back. It is good practice. The practice has become the habit, I hope. Any other comments? Discussion?
Well, in light of Director Sanders' comments, I think perhaps rather than continuing the suspension of surcharges through December, that we continue them through August and take it up at the August meeting.
So can we...
Inarticulate bumbling, I think that's what I meant to say.
So you want to go ahead then, so we do want to keep them in effect. And, by that I mean suspended.
Right.
We want to keep it suspended. And
through August, and then we'll take it up in
keep the
August.
suspension activated, and then come back in August with it. All right.
So to clarify, in the resolution in your packet, we'll be changing section 1 to reflect that they'll be suspended through August 31st of 2016, and we'll revisit the issue at the August meeting.
Okay, so that's our motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
He
I
can't make the
I so
motion.
move.
You so moved.
Just to make it official.
And I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we continue with the suspension through August. Okay, because I think good habits and good practices are out there. All right. Ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 3-0. That passes. So now we're moving on to, we have no more public comment that carried over from the first part of the agenda. So we're talking about future agenda items, of which we've been doing a real good job adding them as we go. So, Mr. Carmel?
I hate to interject, but I did want to address this issue because it's been repeated 3 times today. Sick leave for management employees are dealt with in the payment and compensation plan that's posted on the website. So if Ms. Bettenhausen would like to know how much sick leave Jerry gets, that's where she'll find it.
Okay, thank you for that. We'd like clarity? Clarity. Yes. General Manager Gruber?
And one thing that we can do based on Mrs. Bettenhausen's suggestion is in August when we bring it back, as part of the staff report, have a better better understanding of the categories without without releasing individual account information, but we can do I think a better job in showing you the specific areas and where the usage is occurring. I think what we're going to see is a slight uptick. You know, we did base our rate structure, as Director Sanders said, on 70%. We're in the low 60s now, but I think slowly you're going to see that creep towards that 70%. So as policymakers, when it comes back to you in August, will we have another billing cycle under our, yeah, we will have another billing cycle under our belt by then, so we'll try to break it down and do a little bit better job in breaking it down by categories for you.
I think categories of breakdown is good. Of course, we're going to protect people's privacy, but I think it's useful to take the data and to actually see some trends. The real help would be to just have a little sketch of some of the categories, say, going back for a few months, just to see, you know, is there any big change or not. Okay, any future agenda items? Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you all very much. Meeting is adjourned. Before someone in the audience stated it was going to be, it is.